Welcome to Adventures Gone Mad, your critical look at D&D books. I am Kyle W, and I am here with my favorite host.
Hey everybody, it's Kyle A.
How are you doing, Kyle?
I'm good. It's been snowing here in Portland, so that's always super stupid. It's pretty to look at, but no one knows how to deal with it, including really myself. My dog loves it, though, so that's good.
Yeah, and to be clear for people who aren't from Portland, it's not very common. It happens like once a year here.
Yeah, it's about once a year. Last year, we had the whole, it snows, and then it would melt, and then it would freeze. And that was a nightmare, beyond nightmarish proportions. This time, we were sort of afraid of that last night, but it didn't happen, so I'm much happier. And Juno's happy about it, because she could walk around and sniff stuff.
And also, when you say freeze, it did freeze it snowed, and then it did freezing rain on top of the snow, and it froze everything for about 10 days. Like, it was forever.
Yeah. Last year it was horrendous. Like, I have so many super cute photos of Juno just being like, "No, I'm not going to go. I'm not going to do anything. I'm not going to do my business." She held her water for 24 hours. She would not go number 2 for 3 days. It was crazy.
And you have like a back porch area for her to go, so she doesn't have to walk to do that.
No, but she's very spoiled, and she's spent her whole life going on walks to do all of that, so she refuses to do it. She would just literally stay at the door for like 20 minutes looking at me like, "Please let me back in. I hate this."
So if it she likes the snow, but if it ices over, she rebels against you.
Yeah, but to this week, she was super excited and running around. We went to the park, and she was like, "This is the best thing that's ever happened to me. Snow is awesome. Being cold is awesome." But I did notice, which is really super cute, is that the last time when it was icy and crazy, I would slip and fall. So she was, every time that I had a little slip on the ice, she would stop and look at me and go like, "Okay, what's going on? Are you okay? Is everything okay?" So it was very cute. She was very mindful of me.
Oh, that's adorable. And yeah, so if you're not from the Pacific Northwest and you're listening to this and you're like, why is ice that much of an issue? The problem here is that the terrain is not flat. Everything is, hilly. So when it ices over, you can't get traction like going up or down. And it just there's like all these viral videos of people like slipping down entire hills. Like it was pretty bad last year, but we thankfully have avoided it this year.
Yeah, this year is not so bad. How are you doing, Kyle?
For me, I am staring at my Steam library waiting for Avowed to come out. So that comes out on Tuesday. I can technically get it now if I paid for the premium edition and got it, like 3 or 5 days early, but I refuse to do that because I hate that. So Avowed is the new RPG from Obsidian, which is the people that did like, Pillars of Eternity, Pentiment, Fallout New Vegas. They're kind of known for their RPG writing. And I basically love all of their games. So it's, even if this is turns out to be like a mediocre thing, I'm still going to probably like it more than other people. So,
well, that's good. I mean, something to look forward to, I guess.
The biggest problem for me is that I have Monday off for a holiday and it comes out on Tuesday. So
Ooh.
I'm going to be staring at it and being like, maybe I should pay $80 to play this early, but I'm going to try to resist it.
One day early.
And the worst part about that is I do have Xbox Game Pass, and it's going to be on Game Pass as part of the subscription. So I'm going to get it anyways for having a subscription. But if I want to pay it early, I need the premium edition, which is $80.
Well, do you get other things with the premium edition that you need to have?
No, it's probably like skins or something. I mean, I'm sure you get the soundtrack, which is probably nice because I actually really like the soundtrack for Pillars of Eternity, and I listen to it all the time. But I don't know. Let me check. I'm on a computer, so I can look.
I have actually listened to that Pillars of Eternity soundtrack because you use it a lot for your games when you're DMing as background music.
Yes, I do actually. It's quite good. I recommend both of those soundtracks. Let's see here. So the premium, you get 5 days early access, which would have started on what, Friday?
Yeah, I think that's right.
You get a digital art book and soundtrack, which like I like having soundtracks. I like having art books, but I want like a physical version. So the digital version is like, I don't care. And that looks like it's it. So yeah, it's not worth it to me. I kind of, there's a trend now of releasing games 5 days early.
And wanting extra money for it, yeah.
Yeah, which makes sense if it is an online game and you're trying to make it so that you split up your player base so not everyone is logging on at the same time and crashing your servers. But for single player experience, it's like, come on, dude, just let me have it.
Let me have it. I need it.
But I'm glad that it seems to be received fairly well. I was kind of scared because Microsoft has basically been shuttering their studios even if they do well. And I was like, well, if Obsidian releases this game and they don't do well, then maybe Xbox will get rid of them. But it seems to be doing pretty well. All right, speaking of video games, not really, but speaking of games, Kyle, today we are reviewing Pharaoh. It is module I3 by Tracy and Laura Hickman. It is part of this was published in the Desert of Desolation compilation, so it was later published. There's 3 event modules that are connected, and they were all published under Desert of Desolation. So you might have seen it in that book as well. So I have a physical copy that I got off eBay. Kyle, you have a physical copy as well. Is that right?
So this is actually a module that I had bought in 1980 something as a kid. So, I mean, it was published in 1982, so I think it's probably close to that. So I was probably like, 12 or something when I got this module. Just as a thing, I have all these D&D, my old D&D stuff downstairs in my garage. So, it's just a big library of old stuff. And I happen to have this one. So I have the physical copy as well. Yeah, and I remember reading it or reading parts of it at least when I was very young, but I don't remember anything about it now, other than the cover.
This version that we have was released in 1982. I'll get into this a little bit later, but it was technically released before 1982, but telling the actual original date that it was released is kind of difficult. It also was released as part of the Desert of Desolation supplement, which has this adventure and then the 2 adventures after it, which are interconnected. They are written to be played by themselves if you want, or you could there's a thread going through all of them if you wrote them all.
I do not have the other 2 modules in my library, but I am looking forward to it, actually.
Yeah, so this is the first module in the Desert of Desolation series. So it was previously called Desert of Desolation before that book. So this was released in 1982. At the time, the most popular movie was E.T., the highest-selling album was Thriller, and the highest-selling video game was Donkey Kong.
I think we've mentioned all of that before, but hey,
yeah,
because we keep on getting these modules from 82.
Yeah, we keep doing modules from the first few years of the 80s.
They published a lot of stuff in 82.
Yeah, so I believe, and I could double check this, but I believe this is around the time that AD&D, the revised, came out, and that's when they were releasing a bunch of adventures. So this was written by Tracy and Laura Hickman. Tracy Hickman, is people probably know him from Dragonlance. Although Laura Hickman was involved in the creation of Dragonlance as well. I think Tracy Hickman teamed up with Margaret Weiss for the Dragonlance books, which are probably the most famous thing that D&D's ever done.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, in terms of environments, yeah, I think it is. It certainly is one of the more prolific.
Yeah, people that don't like D&D like Dragonlance, or know anything about D&D like Dragonlance. Those books were wildly popular. And to be honest, at least in the book that I am going to be mentioning a lot during this podcast, various podcasts that we do, Slaying the Dragon, that talks about the history of TSR, the Dragonlance series was basically keeping TSR afloat. Like, it was making all of the money.
That makes sense.
So yeah, Tracy Hickman is a name that people probably have seen before. So a few things about Tracy Hickman that people get confused on. One, Tracy is a guy. A lot of people think Tracy is a female name, but Tracy Hickman is a guy. And he is not married to Margaret Weiss. When I look online, I see a lot of people that make that assumption. Margaret Weiss is his partner that they did Dragonlance together.
Right.
So kind of getting into the history of this module, there's an interview with Tracy and Laura Hickman for the YouTube channel Nerd Immersion. The title of the video is Tracy and Laura Hickman Talk Their History with D&D. And they kind of actually talk about Pharaoh some in this interview. So kind of as a history, Tracy and Laura Hickman both got into, it looks like Laura got into D&D first through like theater friends, which is,
that checks out.
Yeah, probably a pretty common story. I feel like theater people like D&D. So she got into D&D, and Tracy Hickman was into like strategy games already. So he was playing the like SPI board war games and other board games.
Okay.
And he, I guess, initially thought D&D was dumb, like a dumb game at first. He didn't understand it. So in this interview, they talk about how they were kind of struggling a little bit, and a single D&D book of them was a week's worth of groceries. So it was like a significant amount of their money to buy. Like the monster manual they mentioned specifically is like, this was a week of groceries for us.
Wow.
So the idea is they were like, well, if we're gonna like spend all our money on D&D, let's make money with D&D, or let's attempt to do it. So they wrote Pharaoh and Rasasha, I think is how you pronounce that, their other like early adventure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so they wrote these adventures, those two adventures, Pharaoh and Rasasha, and they kind of photocopied them, and they like put them together in their kitchen, and they did their own binding and stuff and sold them at their local game store.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so they even mentioned in the interview, like they had no, I mean, it's probably legal. I think it's probably like a gray area, because people selling, like there were zines and stuff at the time, but I don't know about people like making their own, how common people making their own things and selling them at their local game store was. So essentially the first version of Pharaoh was on the shelf in Utah somewhere. And essentially desperation, they say that like desperation led them to eventually submitting to TSR to get jobs with TSR, because Tracy at the time had lost his job. And they mentioned in the interview they were so poor that they couldn't afford shoes. And they were living off of like assistance from their church at that time.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, I guess that checks out. Like if you think about the timeline, that's like late 70s, early 80s. And that's when we had a massive recession in the country, and the energy crisis, all of that stuff. People were really struggling.
Laura, in these interviews, like there's a lot more. I have more from Tracy's point of view than Laura's. There's a few interviews with both of them, but I think there's more interviews that Tracy Hickman has done. So I don't actually have how much of this adventure is from either of them. They're both credited on it. It sounds like, in this specific interview, it sounds like Laura Hickman did a lot of writing on Pharaoh, because it sounded like adventure was made for Tracy to be able to be in a game. Anyways, they do mention in that interview as well that they called these early adventures night ventures, because they were intended to be 2 evenings worth of play.
Oh, that's cool.
That is cool, but I don't think you could run Pharaoh in 2 evenings. It seems like it would be longer. I don't know. Maybe the original version was different.
Well, maybe they're very long evenings. Maybe not 4 hours, but 8-hour-long evenings.
Yeah, let's start at noon, and
we're starting at 5 and we're ending at 3 in the morning.
So you'll notice, Kyle, in this adventure, there's a lot more plot and story and like character motivation in this adventure than other adventures that we've read.
You mean like the one we just read last time against the Giants, where it was just like stereo prose, and this actually has, writing and a plot and a thought, and there's
Yeah.
actual, yeah.
It really does feel like we went from technical writing with Against the Giants to the opposite of that with Pharaoh.
Yeah, for sure.
So one of the reasons that Tracy specifically said, like, one of the reasons they have this writing style is because, first of all, they both have kind of like a theater background anyways. So they were always more interested in character than probably other people playing D&D. I think like Zeb Cook also had like an English background, so there's a little of that in his adventures too. But Tracy mentions that he was playing a game of D&D and they were in like a dark dungeon cave for some reason, and there was a random encounter table. They walked in the other room and their DM was like, "Okay, random encounter, I'm gonna roll. There's a vampire in this room." And Tracy was like, "Why is there a vampire in this room? That's like a person. That's not like a monster. Like there's motivation behind what vampires do. Why is he just sitting in this room? Is he drinking from humans? Like, why is this vampire here?" So
right.
That made him realize that like D&D kind of needed more story behind what was happening to make it. Otherwise, it gets really silly.
Yeah. Which is something that, in these early modules you really see. And then as you progress through more modern role-playing games, like people are like, yeah, no, the vampire has some motivation. There's a reason why he's in the room. So you got to figure it out.
Yeah, vampires need humans to survive. That's part of the thing.
Yeah, it's just like, the vampires, you just open up a door and there's a vampire. Like, what?
Stop time.
A minor correction here. I'm about to say that Tracy Hickman applied to work at Wizards of the Coast, which is incorrect. He applied to work at TSR. Wizards of the Coast wouldn't exist for about 10 more years and would have nothing to do with D&D for around 10 years after that. I'm just used to saying that because they are currently the owners of D&D. Back to the podcast.
Time begins to move.
So yeah, they both. So they applied. At least Tracy applied to work at Wizards of the Coast, out of desperation, basically because they had no money and they were living off church assistance. Some of this as well is from the Save or Die podcast interview with Tracy Hickman, which is another a different interview, a different podcast that interviewed him. So he basically couldn't find work. That's why he applied for TSR. He does mention in that Save or Die podcast that he applied to be a bus driver in Logan, Utah, and there were 500 other applicants.
Crazy.
So that's how many people were out of work and looking for work at that time.
Yeah, the early 80s, like that late 70s, early 80s, again, like really bad recession, lots of people working for work, the energy crisis. That's why, it's really one of the big reasons why Reagan got elected, that and the hostage situation in Iran, because people were like freaking out. There just weren't any jobs, and they thought they were going to be destitute, like it was going to be another Great Depression.
Yeah, it was really bad at that time. And it's kind of like, reading this stuff, you kind of forget about the like economic conditions that were happening.
Yeah.
So in the Save or Die podcast, they mentioned that they previously owned a game store that didn't work out. This next quote that I'm about to read is from Tracy Hickman's official website. It's on the About page about Tracy. So this is, I didn't see any interviews where he specifically talked about this other than owning a game store, but he does mention this is on his website. And it's written from the third person, so I don't know if Tracy wrote this or someone else, but he could be writing about himself in the third person, and it's like autobiographical. Tracy and Laura wrote the original versions of the module Rahashia and Pharaoh together and privately published them. In 1981, Tracy entered into a business arrangement to produce an arcade immersion game, but his associate left the Hickmans with $30,000 in bad checks to cover. Destitute, Tracy sent Rahashia and Pharaoh to TSR Incorporated. And he says in this quote, literally so I could buy shoes for my children.
Oh, Jesus.
So this was like kind of written before and submitted to TSR. And it is a good adventure. So like I could totally get why TSR read this and was like, we need this person.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
But other than that, like, yeah, the economy was bad at the time, but it sounded like there was some issue where he was left with a debt that he, might have got a little screwed out of that situation.
Yeah, it sounds like he was really, yeah.
So, yeah, they were living off church welfare at the time. And in the Save or Die podcast, it does mention that TSR was offering $500 for adventure modules, and they had already written these two. and they were assembling them at their house. And it says they were also shrink wrapping them at a local butcher shop.
Oh my God! What? Shrink wrapping them in a local butcher shop. Okay.
Yeah, and I'll get it. We'll get into this a little later. But Tracy Hickman is Mormon, so I'm just gonna guess that might be like a person that was also at their church
The
or something
LGS,
that had access to shrink wrapping and was like, "Hey, come shrink wrap." So the butcher shop, I don't think is that random, but still, it's kind of funny. So yeah, so they're offering $500 in early '80s money for adventures, and they couldn't even buy shoes. So of course they were like, "Well, they already have these adventures. Let's submit them."
Yeah.
So Michael Gray, who is currently, at least at the time of the interview, vice president at Hasbro, he saw the adventure modules on the shelves and basically said like, "Hey, we have to hire this guy." So when they submitted the adventure, they basically he immediately got interviewed and hired. So Tracy Hickman, he is Mormon. He considers himself a conservative Christian. And he also does say that when he went to Lake Geneva drove from Utah. So he drove from Utah to Wisconsin, Lake Geneva, Wisconsin, to interview for TSR. And in that ride from Utah to Lake Geneva is when him and Laura Hickman came up with Dragonlance during the drive, which is a historical drive.
Yeah, for our community, the RPG community, that was like a big deal. Coming up with that.
So he does also in that podcast, he tells about going, I guess TSR interviewed him and then took him to the Lake Geneva Playboy Club. Which I had to look, yeah, that exists. There's a bunch of pictures of it. But yeah, Lake Geneva had a Playboy Bunny club.
Lake Geneva had, of course, okay. Well, I guess that makes sense because a lot of the people in Lake Geneva are just like rich people that have second homes. So I guess they would have a lot of entertainment there. I don't know. Must be very bleak in the winter, I would think. But okay.
Yeah, I mean, the bleakness of the winter is part of why D&D exists. Let's go in our basement and play this game for 3 months, right?
Yeah, I guess. And then I guess we'll go to the Playboy Bunny Club too. I don't know.
Yeah, so I did look up some history of this, and I honestly don't know what the Playboy Bunny Club was. It's not. I was like, okay, is this a strip club? It's not really a strip club. It's like a gentleman's club. It kind of looks like a Hooters. I don't have a modern definition of what this club was.
Yeah, I assume it's more like a Hooters, maybe a little more risque than a Hooters.
Yeah, and it seems like, I don't know, Playboy is it is technically pornography, but Hugh Hefner at least was obsessed with, I think, keeping stuff classy. So it still seems like as highbrow as they can make it. I don't know what's going on with the Playboy Club. I don't think it's a strip club, but he does talk about how that was he didn't really want to do it, but he really needed this job, so it was just kind of he just went anyways, and I don't think he really enjoyed it being a conservative Christian man.
Right, I guess we're doing this now. I guess I'm going to go to the Playboy Club.
And at that point, too, they were so poor that they didn't have a phone. It was disconnected, and they were using their neighbor's phone to call for this TSR thing.
Oh, wow. That's crazy.
And before that ride, Tracy's dad was going to hook him up with a job at Sizzler in Flagstaff, Arizona. And he asked him not to become a game designer and to do that instead.
I mean, he could have been serving out some steaks, so I don't know.
So there is a alternate universe where Tracy Hickman moved to Flagstaff, Arizona, and worked at a Sizzler. So yeah, anyways, so that's kind of the history of where Tracy Hickman got involved with TSR, and so Pharaoh kind of predates Tracy Hickman working with TSR in a way. I'm sure it was revised when it was republished by TSR. And I tried to see if I could find an original copy of what they were selling in Utah, but I don't think that exists. I would love to see even just an archive of it or something just for historical purposes.
Yeah, it'd be neat to see sort of what they did, but yeah.
So I have mentioned this before. Tracy Hickman is a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, so he's a Mormon. So you can find more about that on his website. On trhickman.com, he does have a site specifically talking about his faith. And the main reason I wanted to bring this up is because I thought in the 80s, this D&D was associated with Satan worship. That was when the Satanic Panic was happening.
Right.
what was that like from the perspective of a Mormon man. He does have like a fact on his website about his faith, and you could go read it if you want, but basically it says like, hey, how could you support a wicked and devil worshipping game? Where Tracy Hickman responds, and he basically says D&D is not evil. It's itself, it's just people can do evil things with it if they want. And he does talk about like he's always designed his game to be morality tales, which makes sense if you've like read Dragonlance. Dragonlance is a very like good versus evil story. Evil is evil in Dragonlance. There's no like,
moral ambiguity.
Yeah, maybe Lord Soth was right. Like, no, it's, maybe the dragons are fine in Dragonlance. No, there's like, it's very good versus evil. So yeah, he does talk about like his faith and like what inspired him, and his relationship with Jesus Christ and stuff like that on his website. But I was mostly interested in it from the aspect of like, how did that work with the Satanic Panic? I did try to find more interviews and information from Laura Hickman. There's like a few that she did with Tracy, but I don't know. They're both credited on it, and it sounds like at least the Nerd Immersion interview, it sounds like Tracy Hickman did a lot of writing for Pharaoh initially because it was made to be played by Tracy.
It makes sense. So I did want to talk a little bit about the art in this module. I would say that the cover art for Pharaoh is really what drew me to it when I was a kid. I really wanted this just based on that. And that's why I bought it. The cover was just it's gorgeous. Like if you have a chance to take a look, it's really a good illustration, drawing, painting. And then inside the module, it's all the same list of, characters that we know that were, drawing stuff at TSR at the time. It does use a lot of good visual, visual pieces. There's also a lot of, some of the rooms are complicated, and it's really nice to have illustrations of what's going on in those rooms. So that's one of the things that's kind of a strong point.
Yeah, the maps have cross sections, which are fantastic.
So none of the illustrations are signed in the book, but it's really all Jim Holloway. I don't even see, when I look here, and given Jim Holloway's style, I don't see a different style in here, so I'm assuming all of this was drawn by Jim Holloway. They also, I will say, some of them look really rushed versus some of them look really polished, depending on what you did. But yeah, there's a lot, definitely Jim Holloway did all this on here, but he's not credited on the module, at least as far as the one that I have. I don't see that he's credited on there, but he is definitely doing all of the illustrations on here.
He's not credited in mine either. He did sign. If you look on the cover art, you can see his signature on the bottom right.
That's at least something.
So yeah, I do wish these artists were credited. I will say, also looking through this, all of the art is specifically for this module. There is some, because there is like an Egyptian desert theme going on. So there's some other modules that we read where it's like a picture of a goblin, which could be, was made generically and then used in the module. I would say all of this is specifically for this module for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And so the cover is fantastic. And then the first page, the first illustration, that's not the maps and stuff that come with the first illustration with the boat, is fantastic and is a part of the module. It's just great. Like, you're just like, what is going on here? It's
right.
Great.
And without the context of the module, you open that and you're like, why is there an Egyptian
what is going on?
Boat in the air? What is happening?
Yeah, what is going on?
So that really draws you in. All right, Kyle, what is so before we start diving into the meat of the adventure itself, what is your initial quick synopsis on this?
This is a throwback to the 80s and loving Egyptian culture and being freaking out about the tomb of Tutankhamun. It's really what if we had Tutankhamun, but as a module?
That is a consideration. I guess at the time there was a little bit of a Egypt mania in the 80s.
Yeah, there was a big sort of throwback to Egyptian stuff. I remember my mom bought a Tutankhamun tabletop sort of book to put in our den, our living room, and it had all of these illustrations. And I remember looking at that and looking at all of that and being really fascinated by it. But there was a big, there's a big resurgence of all of that art and stuff in the 80s. And you can definitely see that that's part of this module. And Kyle, what would your synopsis be?
My first initial, I guess, reaction to this is like, wow, there's finally some plot, and the PCs have motivation to do something that isn't just getting loot. Finally, some meat on these bones.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, and yeah, getting into it. So we're gonna go to the introduction of this adventure on page 2. So this just like the first paragraph that you read of this adventure is like, when you compare it to the other adventures that were coming out, at the same time that we have read, it is night and day, the difference between the writing style of this adventure and others. This is written more like a novel, I will say.
Yeah. There's a real story here.
Yeah, so here's the introduction of this book. A lonely group of horsemen stands huddled at the base of a range of craggy, dry mountains, the red light of a dying day casting long shadows behind them. A parched wind, still alive with the desert heat, rustles their capes over their sweat-soaked leather armor. The horsemen have formed a circle astride their steeds and hunch down sadly against the sandy wind.
Yeah, that's a novel. Like, we're going to read a novel. We're going to read an actual novel.
It immediately evokes like the image of what this module wants. It just gives it to you, and there's no you don't have to like do work to figure out exactly what's going on. Like it immediately is just packed with flavor.
Yeah, you could see that they wanted to craft a story. They wanted to start somewhere, and where they're starting is, it's great. How do you not love that?
Right, and if I was the dungeon master, I would just read that sentence. I couldn't write one that's better than that.
I mean, realistically, yeah. Like, why would you? This whole page, like, you're going to read pretty much this entire page out to the players, and it even says at the very bottom, like, stop if you play in the mods, don't read any further. But yeah, no, you would want to read this entire page out to your players.
So essentially, it starts with that intro, and your party is like standing within the group of soldiers, and the hook for this is pretty. It's actually kind of funny. Some other adventures start with just like, hey, good, you need to go do this thing to get loot, but this starts a little different. So your party looks like a different group of people, and they have been possibly falsely accused of something, and this is kind of like the punishment that you're getting from the local baron.
Yeah, my favorite. So there's a long thing where they talk about like this commander says like, by decree, this is what's going on. My favorite part of it is death. He says like, if you don't do it, you'll get killed. And then you have a choice of death. And one of the deaths is death by polymorph, which is like,
yeah,
we all kind of know what that is. And it's so good.
So the introduction of this is quite a lot. There is a specific thing that the commander basically turns towards you and reads, which if you're reading the module, you would want to read the whole thing. I'm not going to read it here, but the basic premise is that your party looks like another group of people that essentially pranked the local wizard. They broke into his tent and did a bunch of pranks, which they mentioned shortsheeting is a thing that they did to him, which I had to look up because I had never heard of it. Kyle, have you ever heard of shortsheeting?
I have not.
Okay, so I had to look this up. Shortsheeting is when you fold the top area of a sheet on a bed, like when it's made, you fold it so it looks like you could get under the sheet, but you can't. So like they go to get into bed and they can't get under the sheet because of the way it's folded. Okay. It is like the most childish and like innocent prank.
Yeah. That's hilarious.
Like, oh, I owned you. You got in the sheet and you couldn't get in it. Sorry.
That's amazing.
So they broke into his tent this party that might be your party. It doesn't clarify, but you are being accused of this because it matches the description of your party. So, if you have like an elf and a halfling and a magic user and a dwarf, then that's the same party that did this. But so they short-sheeted his bed and they did a bunch of pranks on him, and then they left a maid in his tent. And then the wizard went to pick up another woman because he wasn't there. And when he picked up another woman and returned to his tent, there was a woman there already. So that caused a fight with the woman that he brought back, because the assumption being that the wizard was already in a relationship. So it's like kind of a very sitcom a situation.
Yeah. It's great.
So this is why you were brought to the desert. And as you were saying, the last line, so you're tasked with exploring the Desert of Desolation. There essentially are some raiders that you're looking for in the Desert of Desolation.
Yeah, some raiders have done some stuff to these horsemen, have done stuff to the caravans, and stuff to the kingdom or whatever, and you got to go and find out what's going on with them and pretty much murder them.
Yeah, and the last sentence of this is, "Be it further decreed that if they prefer not this quest, they may choose of death by hanging, death by fireball, death by polymorph, death by flamestrike, or death by lightning."
I don't know what death by polymorph exactly is, but it sounds terrible. Like, you get polymorphed into a chicken and then stabbed? Like, I don't know.
Yeah, you get polymorphed into a chicken, and they take you to Dwellers of the Forbidden City, and Yuan-Ti eats you, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, I guess. I don't know, but it sounds horrible.
But yeah, anyways, this adventure has like kind of a lighthearted comedy intro, which is, there's been some comedy in D&D already, but a lot of the comedy I would compare to, like, I know I made this comparison already, but like Looney Tunes type of comedy, but this is like a very, I don't know, like you could have a lot of fun with this, for sure. Also, to keep note, this is a level 5 to 7 adventure, so you're not playing level 1 characters, you're playing like decently.
Yeah, it's sort of interesting, and we really don't get into it here, but 5 to 7, you're fairly accomplished. So, the fact that you're getting accused of this and you're like a level 7 wizard is sort of like, you might be fairly well accomplished, but apparently not accomplished enough, and that kind of doesn't matter. We can just sort of wave our hands around and just say like, yeah, you got accused of some stuff. Maybe you've been down on your luck or something.
Yeah, and it does really characterize the Baron of this area is extremely petty. Yeah.
He's just like, just grab those adventurers and say that they were the ones, and let's send them out and kill those nasty bandits we've been dealing with.
So yeah, that's basically the kickoff to this adventure, is that you have to go into the Desert of Desolation, which like some people don't come back from.
Sounds pretty bad. Could be pretty bad.
So page 3 is notes to the dungeon master. And it kind of just tells you how to run this dungeon. This is formatted in a different way than we have seen other modules, and I don't know if it's just this one because it predates even Tracy Hickman and Laura Hickman coming to or at least Tracy Hickman coming to TSR. So each section has a description, which is a general description of the area. It has play, which outlines the general sequence of events that players will run into. So that would be like, hey, players entering from the north will step on this trap, etc. It also gives you monsters, and there's a section for like character, treasure, and lore. So it gives you lore of a certain area.
Yeah, this is really great. It's really nice that there's always a structure to every room, so you can sort of count on it. And then at the same time, the fact that we actually have lore, which is really just like, hey, we want to create a story, so we need the lore of what's been going on here in order for you to completely generate the story. So it's great. Like it's a really good, nice way to, sort of give you a structure to play around with.
Right, and I think this is the first adventure that we have done on this podcast that has traditional box text.
Yes.
For rooms.
This was also the first module when I bought it that had this box text, and I was like, "Oh, that's really nice." I remember seeing it as a kid and going like, "Wow, a lot of my job as a dungeon master is going to be cut in half."
Yeah, so that is the thing that we have kept in modern day from these dungeons is box text, which is every room has a box at the top that has the text for what to read aloud to your players. So there's no confusion of sometimes in these other modules, if you're running it and the players enter a room, you have to look at the text and be like, okay, what did the players see versus what do I know as a DM? But this just tells you you just read the box text, which that is retained. Like current adventurers still do that. And it also tells you a little bit about exploring, because it starts as kind of this adventure is a little bit of a hex, what we would call a hex crawl, like Isle of Dread, where you essentially walk around a little bit until you find the dungeon. I think that's basically it for the notes to the dungeon master. Yeah, this just tells you how to set it up. It also does tell you that. Also, notes to the dungeon master. This does tell you that if you enjoy this, it says if you enjoy this module, you may wish to continue with the next adventure, which is Oasis of the White Palm, and then the adventure after that is a Lost Tomb of Martek. So those are the 3 Desert of Desolation adventures. All right, so moving on to page 4, we have the Desert Prologue. So this is a boxed text that it gives you that essentially says, when you are in the desert and there is nothing happening on the hex that you're in, this is what you read. And it's I think it's a very evocative paragraph that I do like.
You know, they're really trying to paint a picture of being in the desert, of all of these rooms, of everything. But this one's, it's really painting this like, hey, you're in this desolate place. And then also on the page, it talks about like water, which is super important, obviously, in the desert, how you're going to move. You're getting some draft animals.
Yes. So the first choice that you make, each player has a choice of either taking a camel or a draft horse. And it does say that all the camels are ill-tempered and they will refuse to travel all the time.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny because it's like, why would I take a camel over a horse? And I didn't really figure out why I guess they can carry more, maybe not. So
there is later on in some of the random encounters, I think, let me see. There are a few sections where there is a sinkhole and the camels deal with it way better than the horses because they're desert animals.
Yeah, I guess you're right. That's right.
So you have the camels are ill-tempered and hard to get to listen to you, but there are a few traps where the horses will fall into it way easier than the camels. Which it's D&D, so you have to kill horses.
Yeah, of course. It's old D&D. We need all your mounts dead.
If we've learned anything from the modules we've read, D&D is about killing horses, giant insects, and cavemen.
Yep. Now we're adding Egyptians into it.
Yeah, there will be some giant insects in this module. But I just want to read the Desert Prologue really quick because I actually think it's quite good. And coming from the other adventures that we've read thus far versus this. So, stretching to the limits of your sight, the gray mounds of the desert roll with ashen stillness into the distance, baked by the blazing sun. Not a single stone shows through the powdery plain, nor a single insect scurries across its surface. All about you, the burning silence of the sand sea is oppressive and forbidding. No landmark steers your way except the sun. Its tracking seems to sink ever closer and hotter towards your own path. The ash dust billows under your feet and chokes your parched throats.
It's great.
Fantastic. Immediately I can see what that not only can I immediately see what that looks like, I know what that feels like.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's nice. It's nice to have this thing already sort of set up for you.
And it talks about movement through the hex grid, and how far you travel, things like that. And it gives you the random, and you get to pick a camel or a draft horse to carry your stuff. And you get, what is it? You have about 10 days of water. initially. And then you kind of have to figure out your own thing after that. And then we run into the Desert of Desolation random encounter table. Yeah, so there's a random encounter table of just a bunch of really like new and interesting stuff. So the first thing that you could run into is what's called a dust digger. It looks like it's on the end. It's in the monsters on page 28. It looks like a starfish that buries itself in the sand and waits for something to walk over it, and then it like ambushes you and tries to eat you. And I think there's some fish that do this, but yeah, it buries itself in the sand and waits for vibrations for you to walk over it.
Yeah.
And it also has the dust diggers can also project illusions. So they will often project like a pool of water or something to like bring people in. And that's the first time I've heard of that monster. I've never seen it anywhere else. And then you could also run into a single Sandman, which I believe is they are used by Tao, which are the Earth genies, to capture slaves, essentially. And then Thunder. And then number 3 is 40 Thunder Herders.
So Thunder Herders are sort of like worms in the desert. They're related to purple worms. And they're not aggressive. They just basically travel in giant herds. So you can either hit 40 of them or 120 of them. They really don't. They just basically make everything frightened, and it's going to make your mounts like run and all kinds of stuff like that. But they're not like, if you don't attack them, they won't do anything. So there's no treasure or anything with them, but they're just sort of a thing that's like, a nuisance that you need to avoid, or something you're going to, if you really want to, you could try to fight them, but it sounds like a really bad idea.
Yeah, essentially it's like a stampede of animals, but they're desert worms.
Yeah, and, you hear them from 4 miles away, so you can sort of like get out of the range of them and just sort of watch them go by if you'd wanted to, or you can attack them for some reason.
Yeah, and it looks like they cause where is it? Yeah, it looks like they cause like kind of an earthquake. So they are like kind of disruptive to the party, but they're not like a thing that directly attacks you, which is like I think that's interesting flavor on the adventure. Like I do like when encounters aren't just a vampire shows up and you fight it, And there's a couple environmental things that can happen. One is that black clouds will form on the horizon and acid rain will start to fall.
Yeah, the Desert of Desolation is not a fun place.
Yeah, so notably, acid rain will fall, doing 1d4 damage per round to any exposed flesh or food supplies. So you have to find cover, because that might actually kill your mounts pretty quickly. There's giant tarantulas, this is early D&D, so we need giant insects, as we were saying before.
Always giant insects.
And then the special encounter table, so you get to, this is the first time that you might run into the Thune dervishes.
Yeah, and it also will, getting these special ones will actually start to get you to the areas you actually want to go to, which is interesting. So like there's a pillar of smoke and you can go to here, and there's another pillar of smoke and it goes to here, and that's like the places you actually want to be on this like hex crawl where things actually happen or start to happen.
Yeah, so this is designed so you don't, like, a problem with hex crawl is that depending on what you're trying to do, you could just wander around forever and it just seems like you're walking around aimlessly. This actually like will eventually lead you to where you need to go in the adventure. Like, it seems like they're not interested in you walking around the desert that often. They want you to do it to get like some characterization of the desert, but they don't want you to do it for too long.
Yeah, it is not the point of this module.
So yeah, there's the dervish hunting party. There's 10 Thune dervishes, which we'll talk about a little bit more later because they're involved in this. They're essentially like lawful. They're lawful neutral, and they will only attack you if you like mess with temples, which you're playing D&D characters, so you're going to do that at some point. But they will actually offer you like food and supplies for your camp as well. You can also run into Shabayan air lancers, which are riders that are on hippogriffs.
Yeah, and I think this is the only time you actually can run into them.
Yes, they might come up in future modules, but yeah, you can just be wandering around, and then these people on hippogriffs like fly over and kind of come down and talk to you.
Pegasi, right? Not hippogriffs, Pegasi.
Oh, is it Pegasus? Yeah, I think it is Pegasus. Pegasi. It's weird because the Pegasus is a proper noun, so you would say Pegasuses, but in D&D, Pegasus is like a thing that's not really a proper noun.
Right.
So I don't know if it's Pegasuses or Pegasi.
I would say Pegasi, but that's just me.
Anyways, so yeah, the air lancers will just kind of like land and talk to you, and they will not attack you unless you attack them, and it's probably going to be a generally bad idea for you to do that.
So I do want to point out that the Simian air lancers have a true faith. If you look in the back where they describe them, and it's different from the dervishes. So it's something to take note of, that there's a true, they practice the true faith, where the dervish apparently are not, because they're looking for the dervishes to basically either eradicate them or fight them or whatever they're supposed to be doing. So they're warring against each other.
Right. And then the true faith is also what they call it as well.
Right. It's in quotes. You can't see me on the podcast with my fingers, but I'm doing the finger air quote thing with it, the true faith.
Yeah, so they're at like they are two basically religious factions that are at war with each other in a way. And the Thune dervishes, they are primarily interested in preserving not just like the temples here, but any sort of religious temple.
Yeah, they're sort of a preservist, and what I'm assuming is the Sambian will destroy it. Like they're going to destroy these sort of old artifacts because they're not a part of their true faith. It's just very obviously we have a lot of Islamic sort of I don't know when we want to talk about this, but there's definitely a cultural appropriation sort of white people view of what these factions are supposed to mimic sort of in Islamic culture. So yeah, there's that. I don't know if we want to get into that yet.
This module does stumble into some religious stuff, and there's a back, like I think that there's like a religious background with the author who definitely, I think he used we'll get into this later, but he used phrases from the Quran multiple times in this. But yeah, there's I know that there at some point there was like a revolution in the Middle East, and that there was like multiple religious factions, and this is probably a reference to that.
Yeah, I think that there's. I mean, we also to preface this is a fantasy game, so this is not like he's taking elements of those things, and I don't think he's necessarily trying to insult them or anything like that.
Right.
Or make fun of it. If anything, he's doing the opposite. But it is something to point out that there is this sort of interesting dynamic presented here between, someone who, is practicing the true faith versus these other Thune dervishes who are sort of practicing a different faith. And, there's a parallel here between, Islamic factions.
Yeah, especially from a historical standpoint. And the Thune dervishes are lawful neutral, and the Simbayan air lancers are lawful good. So they're both on the lawful axis of things, but I guess they have different interpretations of what they want to do. So you kind of like, you might not even get that. Assumably, you might not even run into the Simbayan air lancers in this module. You will run into the Thune dervishes. That's impossible to skip, but you might not even. You could easily omit this from the module if you didn't want to deal with it, or if you're just running it by the dice, they might not even run into one of these factions.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely run into dervishes like you said, but the Simbayan, you have a very good chance of never seeing.
Yep, and then that's other than a purple worm might show up.
Yeah, no big deal, just a purple worm. Don't worry about it.
Which is HD 15, which is in the older D&D that was supposed to be the 15th level of a dungeon.
Yeah, and not that many hit points, only 54 hit points.
But they do have a death poison in their tail, so you could instantly die if it stings you and you roll bad. Okay, so on page 6. There are more a trope that we see in these early adventures. There are rumors, and there's 10 different rumors, and 2 of them are false, and 8 of them are true. And notably, 3 of these rumors don't matter unless you do the 3rd module in this series.
Yeah, isn't that interesting?
And it does tell you, like, hey, these verses are, these, like, things are from the other modules, so if you're not doing it, you might want to skip this rumor. But the idea is you roll a d10 for each player below each player, and you give them a rumor. One, I guess, bugbear I have with this module, when it eventually gives you lore, there's a lot of, so you wander through the desert, and you run into these different places that have old, like, I'm assuming it's supposed to be like hieroglyphics, like old writing, and there's a percentage chance for each player to read it. It doesn't go down to like an intelligence roll, you just roll a percentage.
Right.
And you get a lot of the lore from that. Honestly, if I was running this, I would just say either the smart player reads it or just let all the players read it.
Or, you roll and then whoever got the best roll gets to read it. That's probably how I would do it. Because you want them, let's not skip this lore. So I would probably have them all sort of roll it and then see who had the best roll closest to the 30% chance and have them read it. Or if they get below 30%, you could have multiple people read it. But I like the idea of somebody at least reading it.
As you're walking around, you will find that there's like this Desert of Desolation was once a great like Egyptian like desert Nile culture.
Right.
You start finding that from the lore. So I think that's like an important thing for the players to know. The way that Tomb of Annihilation, the 5th edition adventure, the way that they solve that is they give you like a Rosetta Stone sort of thing that lets you read old text. Like it takes a while to do it, but it lets you decode it, which is like a pretty good solution to that. Because I think the players should probably be getting all of this.
Yeah, for sure.
Like when you leave something up to random chance in D&D, there's always a chance that it's going to fail. So you have to ask yourself, like, does this make the adventure more interesting? And I don't know if like reading half of these makes it more interesting.
You want people to know it. It should be sort of interesting to see. You definitely want somebody reading this, being able to read this in some way, shape, or form. Maybe they could skip a couple of them, but I wouldn't want to. I would want them all to read all these.
And then one of the first things you run into is the sinkhole, which is... This is on various parts in the desert, but essentially there is a sinkhole that opens up, and the horses do not deal with it as well as the camels because the camels are desert creatures, so they are used to this terrain. And it gives you a lot of directions on like if something is sinking, you need like 30 strength points in total to pull out a human-sized creature and 80 to pull out one of the horses or camels. And then you will roll to see if they sink. Camels will sink on a roll of 1 on a d10, and the other animals on a 1 on a d6. So the camels deal with it a lot better.
It's also sort of a way to, I guess, put your, make it, you fear the desert more, because like all your stuff may just go away.
And yeah, it just, as I turned this page, I saw the just descriptive text boxes, and I was like, man, I missed these. These haven't happened in any of the other adventures we've been reading. I will also note they use the word sand and ash repeatedly for the desert, and it sounds like the sand here is supposed to be extremely fine. And it also repeatedly describes it as gray instead of the normal color of sand. Yeah, so page 7. So we go over to page 7. You're still walking through the desert at this point, and there's various different areas. One thing that I do find interesting, there's a thing, basically they call it the fork in the trail. So you will follow a trail, and then you eventually land to like where the trail ends, because like this is like too far into the desert for more normal people to venture. One thing that's really interesting is if you can get a storm on the random encounter table. If you roll that storm, it basically says that it makes the trail disappear. So you kind of skip this.
Right.
So I thought that was interesting in that the randomly. It kind of shows you how dangerous like walking around in this desert is. But then, Kyle, we reach the first actual like mini dungeon place of note, the sunken city of Pizar.
Yes. And you sort of uncover it by falling into it, right? Or something like that.
Yeah, so this is a separate dungeon from the main dungeon. It's kind of like a mini dungeon. So there is So you walk into the sunken city of Pizar, which is the upper half of a statue thrust up from the ash dunes of the desert. The noble face is pockmarked and scarred by the ravages of time and sand. The statue seems to be holding a tablet half buried in the sand against its chest. And there's a 20% cumulative chance per round that a person in front of the statue will cause a stone in the domeway below to break, and they will fall into the dungeon.
Which you kind of want to have happen.
Yes, that might be, honest. So it's 20 cumulative percent, so eventually it's going to happen. I think most DMs probably were just like, it happens when you do this.
Yeah, you would just want it to happen.
So that causes you to break the dome that you were standing on, and then fall 70 feet below into the sunken city of Pizar, which takes you to the sunken dome of Elish. Interestingly, I did note, climbing the sand pile unaided can be done only 40% of the time by normal players, or as they climb walls by thieves at plus 10% to their normal roll. I think this is the first time in a module that a thief has got a bonus and their ability wasn't like nerfed by the environment.
Right. Yep. Gygax apparently hated that they could climb walls, which is like, what? Okay.
They were certainly cognizant that could break part of the adventure if the thief can just climb the wall, it seems. But in this case, they have a bonus to it because they're good at climbing. So you fall into this dungeon, the sunken dome of Elish, and
there's not much in there other than it's sort of the start.
Yeah, there is a thing. You fall into this the sunken city, which is a mini dungeon. There is something I wanted to bring up. So the entry cell room on page 7, room G3. So the slanted floor of this dark 20-foot square entry leads to the south. Before you, 2 golden doors, bright and shining, gleam in your torchlight. The doors have no handles or fixtures, but are carved with strange writings. To the north and south, 5-foot wide passages lead off into the darkness. So both of those doors are magically locked, and they will not open unless the palms of a character's hands wave before them and the player says, Sarkir al-Jinni. So that's a word that you learn later on in this dungeon. So this dungeon uses a lot of Arabic words. So my first thought is, when I read these words, like what is the actual word that they're using? Because I don't think they're making it up.
Stop time.
Hey everyone, just wanted to stop this because I'm about to explain something not super well, and I just wanted to clarify. I'm about to reference the Wikipedia article, List of Spiritual Entities in Islam. The one that we're talking about here, Sakir, is listed, and that article itself does link to the article for Asmodeus. The reference for why that is linked together is from a German book called Demon Glaba im Islam, and it is a language that I can't speak, so I can't really read this book and see why it's linking that way. Additionally, the ebook for this is $300. But essentially, I just wanted to clarify that I am kind of talking about entities from a religion that I'm not a part of, that is referenced from a book in a language that I can't read. So please take the following with a grain of salt, and I mostly just got this from online research that I can't really dive any deeper into. So I just wanted to leave that up front. Thanks.
Time begins to move.
So in Islam, at least from what I can tell, Sarkir, so the word Sakhr, I think Sarkir is how you say it. So I'm pretty sure Sarkir al-Jinni is like of the genie or of the jinn.
Is that in Arabic? Or you said Islam. Do you mean Arabic?
Yeah, so it's an Arabic word, but Sarkir is it's a word that is used for like the actual Wikipedia article for Sarkir links to Asmodeus.
Really?
Yeah. And I'm looking at the Wikipedia article for List of Spiritual Entities in Islam. So it is an Arabic name for like a folklore spiritual entity that is the king of the jinn, sometimes of demons, appears in the Legend of Solomon.
Okay.
Yeah, so I was a little surprised that like Asmodeus is a character in D&D basically, but this is like a reference to I couldn't find much information on it that wasn't from like video game, like references in video games and stuff. This is the only thing that I can find is that, at least on Wikipedia, this list of spiritual entities in Islam, it is potentially a reference to this being. Being as the history of Asmodeus, I did want to bring that in D&D. I did want to bring that up.
Oh, for sure.
So yeah, it's intended to be a person's name, but it clearly has some sort of like background. I think that's it for that.
Yeah, it seems like most of this is pretty straightforward. I mean, obviously, like getting into pass-through entry cell is sort of problematic because you don't know, unless you have a knock spell, you're not getting in. And obviously, if you know the keyword, which is like, how would you know that unless you...
Yeah, you have to go to the scroll room in G6, and then you will find...
what you're supposed to say.
Yeah, you find the words that you're supposed to say, which you will use in the next room on page 8 in the room the room of the Guardians, which is a interesting little trap puzzle room.
There is an Efreeti.
So yes, I find this exciting because genies are probably one of my favorite monsters in D&D. So anything that involves genies, I immediately am super into. So you will eventually walk into the room of the Guardian. So there's a lot going on in this room. So it's a 60-foot long room with a 60-foot high ceiling. There are 3 traps in the room, and on the opposite side of the room when you walk in is a genie lamp. Which, like, obviously, what are genies known for? Giving you wishes.
Yeah, lay wishes.
So, of course, any D&D group that runs in here is going to be like, I want that lamp.
Yep.
So, there are 3 different traps. So there's 3 different, essentially, curtains. And you have to get through the traps or through the curtains to get to the lamp. The first trap is a curtain that is a wall of absolute cold. If you fail your saving throw, you will become instantly frozen, turning a blue color and frosted all over, including all implements and things that you're holding. You may be revived by throwing the character System Shock or less on percentile dice after a slow thaw. So you can be defrosted suddenly by being hit with a flamestrike or fireball.
Okay.
You will find this in the scroll room earlier when you're getting the magic words, but the way to get through it to basically remove this curtain is by speaking the word, and I'm going to say this incorrectly, I apologize, Alhamdulillah, which is a Arabic word that means all praise to God. It is in the Quran, and it is used quite often even by non-Muslim Christians. So I wonder with his religious background if he knew this from church. So after you get through that is a yellow translucent curtain that will that appears between you. And if you contact this curtain and fail a saving throw versus rods, you'll be struck by lightning for 5d6 damage. And you have to say the word Bismillah.
Bismillah.
Which is also from the Quran. It is the name. Apparently, it means when I looked this up, it means the name of God.
Wow. So
if you had any sort of education in the Quran, which I don't, then you would know this. Yes, these words that he's picking. I don't think that is meant to be any sort of disrespect. I actually think that he's picked them in a respectful way because he obviously knows. Given his background, probably knows a little bit about the religion of this area. But I think that any sort of current game module would avoid anything like that.
Yeah, we would not want to use those words. We would just use open or something in Arabic.
Yes.
Or just make up words.
Yeah, and noticeably different things in D&D that are based on this, Al-Qadim. Granted, there's a lot of Islam in that. I've read that core book, and it spends a ton of time explaining how a mosque works, for example. The primary design of that is to be 1001 Arabian Nights in D&D.
Right.
Okay, and then there's, after you deal with that curtain, there's another curtain that if you touch it, you have to save versus breath weapons or be struck with 5d10 worth of fire damage.
Not insignificant.
And you have to say the word Duban to get rid of it. And Duban is the name of a character from 1001 Arabian Nights.
Kind of random, but okay.
So on the platform, once you deal with all those traps, either by saying the words or dispelling them, or just running into them like an idiot and then dealing with the fallout. So you get to the brass lamp. Inspecting the lamp, you will see there's a symbol of two interlacing triangles. It gives no sort of like hint on the alignment. If the seal is removed, you deal with the monster above, which is an Efreeti pasha.
Which I guess is like an elite pasha. Sorry, an elite Efreet.
Yeah, so if you look in the back of the book, it tells you that there are only 6 pashas in all of the world, or realms, or D&D, or however you want to say it. So
right.
They are basically like under the Efreeti Sultan, and they rarely leave the plane of fire except at his command. So this is a 15th level magic user that has all sorts of crazy spells, and he can notably fulfill another's wish, although he is loath to do so.
I will also point out that since this is advanced D&D, a 15th level fireball is 15d6 fireball damage.
Yeah, you are not supposed to fight this thing. It will easily kill you.
15 die fireballs at will.
Yeah.
At will. Like, it's not like stops there. You can just you just have to do that.
Yeah, after dealing, like, presumably you might have taken a ton of damage dealing with these traps too.
Right.
So essentially you let this creature out. I think this pasha is going to it comes up in the next module, because it does mention something about, like, if you're doing the next module, you want the players to come here. But he essentially is just like, I don't even think he thanks you for freeing him. He just leaves.
Yeah, they say he's sort of ornery.
Yeah. But at least it's a pretty cool character the DM gets to play with, of like a very powerful evil magic user that can fry the party at any time. Not necessarily interested in instantly killing the party. He's, I think, thankful for being saved, and at least leaves.
Well, no, he does say he plans to destroy all of civilization.
Wait, where does it say? I missed that.
He is not bound to perform a service for the player characters. He will laugh at them, and after informing them of his plans to lay waste to all civilization, will rush out through the opening.
Okay.
He will not fight the characters unless attacked.
Okay, so revision on what I said. He wants to destroy all of civilization, a little different than what I initially said. But he will not fight unless attacked, so he is, I think, at least thankful for being removed from his trap in the lamp.
Yeah, but then he's like, okay, well, I'm just going to kill all you, so bye.
Yeah.
Which might lead you to want to attack him, so that's, I don't know, it's up to you. I don't know if you really want your party fighting this Efreet. We'll see.
And he's been kept in this bottle for 1,000 years.
Yeah, he's not happy.
So yeah, your players fight through this trap, get to the other side, open the genie, and they're like, oh yeah, I'm going to get a wish because, I'm familiar with 1001 Arabian Nights and Aladdin. And then it says, this guy pops out and is like, I could kill you if I wanted to, but I don't want to. Instead, I'm going to lay waste to all civilization later. See ya. Yeah,
and what you could do, again, throwing 15 die fireballs at will, that's, you're going to lay waste to a lot of things.
And then the only other notable thing in this after that room, there's the pool of Tefnut. This is a whole nother... this isn't in the dungeon. It's just another place that you can run into outside of the dungeon. So like the way this is set up is a little confusing. But after this little mini dungeon, the only other thing that you run into is the pool of Tefnut, which is a oasis that if a good aligned character looks into the pool, they will run into the monster, which is a set of sultry almond eyes will appear in the ripples of the pool. A watery voice like the lapping of waves upon the shore will address the character and answer only 3 yes or no questions for that character, as truthful as possible. So you can get a lot of information about the module if you run around and read the lore stuff first and then run into that. But if you run into that initially, probably not going to get that much information. All right, now that we're done with that micro dungeon, we are on page 9, which is like when the real like Pharaoh, you meet the Pharaoh of the Pharaoh adventure, Pharaoh.
Very Pharaoh-esque.
So for Jay, while you're walking around on the hex grid, for every hour that you remain in any of the areas J, there's a 5% cumulative chance that the monster encounter will take place.
And looking at the map, J is like is almost like they're just little squares, a bunch of little squares with J in them. So there's several hex crawl squares that have J's in them if you remain in there, and then there's a cumulative chance. I think, like, maybe you should just forget the cumulative chance and just, maybe the first time you start accumulating it and the second time they hit one of the J's, you do there. I don't know, because there's a chance that, like, they never go on to J. So that would be kind of dumb.
The way that I would handle this, and to be clear, you are about to meet the Pharaoh who gives you a giant monologue of the adventure. But the way that I would handle this is I would use it as a pacing tool. After that first dungeon, it'd be like, okay, they've walked around a little bit. Now it's a good time for him to show up. I think most modern writing adventures would tell you to do that. But there should be a stopgap to where you will always run into this character at some point, and you could really use it as a pacing tool to be like, okay, it's kind of like lulling a little bit. Let's move the adventure on. Okay, so what happens is a solitary man in rags appears over the crest of the hill about 100 yards away. His features are indiscernible as he shuffles towards the dust. The name of this character is Amun-Re, the Pharaoh of Bakar. And when you get close to him, he will turn and address the party with this upcoming monologue, and he will do so basically. He will recite these words when he encounters the party. He will continue to do so each evening until the party is within sight of the pyramid. So he basically just like shows up and repeats this over and over again.
So get to the pyramid or he'll just keep bothering you.
Okay, so this is a lot, but I do think it's important because it is essentially the characterization and the reason why you're on this adventure and what's going on this adventure.
So since this is so long, me and Kyle are going to read it in parts. So I'm going to go first. I am Amun-Re, son of Takosh-Re of the house of Mopolar. These legs you see before my shadow, which has walked these lands for time uncounted, in search of mighty men of valor to plead their aid. In my time when I was Pharaoh of this land before you, it was a green and beautiful land, blessed by the gods of heaven westward, with a wondrous spirit that gave life to our land and nurtured our crops. Yet robbers did raid the tombs of my forefathers and take from them tokens of their passage into the lands of the dead, thus keeping them from their reward after life. I swore that all costs would I not fall prey to their evil deeds. So it was with that I made mighty and terrible war upon my neighbor lands, plundering their wealth for my own passage. I did enter contract with a great mage who did work a mighty wonder, and upon sweat and blood of my people did I build a theft-proof tomb. My people turned against me with bitter hatred. I not only robbed our borderlands, but did tax and plunder my own people, and take from them their wealth. They rose up in anger, demanding their gold and precious gems, their lives and freedom. But I cursed them, saying,
By the ruling staff and the star gem of Mopolar, I curse you. Threaten not my life, or by these implements of my power and holy name of Osiris, will the stopping of my heart also stop the spring of Oasis from her life-giving flow. If the river stops, so shall your land wither in the wilderness. This do I swear by Osiris's holy name and these implements. From a sea of upraised fist before me rose one with a spear. The shaft sped from the darkness, and so that night did the spring of Oasis stop its flow. In death, my spirit gleefully approached my pyramid, but Osiris stopped my spirit from entering that tomb. For, said he, your monument to life was to be the benefit you brought to the people under your stewardship, not this edifice of stone. As you looked only to your death in life, so shall you look only to your life in death. I am bound to fulfill your curse, for you have called it down with power in my name, and I do curse you, Amun-Re, that you shall not enter this tomb. Where are the implements of your voyage to heaven, until some mortal soul does despoil this place, taking your staff of ruling and the star gem of Mopolar from your theft-proof tomb.
I have even talked with the wind in hopes of help. Encountered seasons have passed, and my kingdom is not now to be but seen in these desert lands, save for my tomb, which stands now as then, Many have tried, I trust, none have succeeded. My wealth is thine. If thou can be undo this thing that I have done, remove both my staff of ruling and the star gem from my tomb, then you may have wealth and release me. Follow my path to wealth or woe, to the destiny or doom. Pretty good.
It's good. It's
Pretty
wonderful.
Cool.
I love it. There is like a little bit of confusion. I would say, like, first of all, if I was reading this, definitely I would read this and then print it out and hand it over and be like, here's what he said, because it's important. There is a little bit of confusion as a spoken word because it's like, it's a quote that he's saying and then he quotes people while he's talking, which is like a little weird.
Yeah. Like Osiris said what?
Yeah, so essentially the TLDR of this is that he became obsessed with making it to heaven, and he made a theft-proof tomb, and he spent like most of his life doing that, and he ignored the citizens of what is it?
His land,
Picard, yeah. So he ignored his citizens, and then they rose up and killed him. And then when he was trying to go to, like, his spirit was going to his temple to go to heaven, Osiris appeared and said, no, you were a bad ruler, and your curse is that you cannot go to heaven until someone plunders your tomb. That's the curse. However, he spent all this time making a theft-proof tomb, so he's stuck in limbo, essentially.
And he wants you to save it. Well, save his land. Save his soul, basically, but also the land. Because the land is cursed.
A pretty interesting way of being like, as a D&D adventure, the whole thing where you go plunder tombs and take everything, that's what you have to do, but I actually want you to do it. Please plunder my tomb.
Whatever you do, please plunder. By the way, it's really theft-proof, and there's probably lots of dangers and stuff. You're probably going to die, but please plunder my tomb.
And also, since he keeps saying this, I think there's like kind of it kind of seems like maybe he just does this to everyone that's in the desert. Who knows? Right. But he essentially just keeps asking people to plunder the tomb. Probably
another reason why people keep disappearing is they're like, oh, okay, yeah, I'll go plunder your tomb. And then they reach the tomb and go, oh, well, now I'm dead.
Yeah, it's an explanation why no one has returned. Oh, I just wanted to make a comment because this module refers to this multiple times. Heaven westward. So the West in Egyptian like religion and culture, like ancient Egyptian religion and culture, has some sort of significance. So the ancient Egyptians, the West, specifically like the desert, the area west of the Nile, was the destination of the dead. And that's because like the sun rose every day in the western horizon. So there is an association in ancient Egyptian religion with the West being like the afterlife or heaven.
Oh.
So that wasn't just a thing they randomly picked. Like that was some research that they did.
Ah, okay. That makes sense.
So yeah, maybe that giant monologue is like a little too much. I personally love it, but it's probably better as like a player handout as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
I would probably hand it out and be like, you can read along while I'm talking to make it less confusing. And it's obviously a thing that they're going to want to reference multiple times.
Yeah, they're going to want to go back to it, I think. Because the whole purpose is getting the star and the staff. So.
Oh, right. And then another thing in the lore, before it does this, it says, he will continue to do this every evening until the party is within sight of the pyramid. He will then stop and slowly raise his arm to point towards the ancient tomb. And if you look at the cover art of the book, that is what he is doing. It's referring to that specific moment in this module.
Yeah.
Which is wonderful. I don't know if we've had an adventure yet that has like a specific moment call out like that.
Yeah, I will also point out that like when they talk about him, they see he's in rags and that he sort of like he doesn't look very kingly or pharaoh-y. Let's just put it that way. That's a word I just made up. But in the picture, there's him in like the Tutankhamun, like, robes and jewelry and all of that stuff. And it's like, okay, well, yeah, it wouldn't be a very good picture with someone who is just like in rags pointing at a pyramid, but someone who's in, these sort of very Egyptian robes and accoutrement looks much more effective and is a much more interesting picture than someone in rags.
And it's the cover, and it's on page 9, the art behind the monologue has a picture of him like that too, with like the Pharaoh headdress on. He doesn't have a face in that, like it's an apparition quite clearly, but he has like the Pharaoh headdress thing on. I don't know what the name of that is. So maybe like a disagreement between the artist and the author. Who knows? But I think I like the Egyptian Pharaoh.
You definitely, it's much more compelling.
Also, like, I mean, your characters are going to be doing some metagaming and being like, we know this adventure is called Pharaoh, and there's a Pharaoh right there. Cool. So we get to the actual. So going on to page 10. Did you want to say anything else about Amun-Re?
No.
So moving on to page 10, it's section 2, the temple. So this is the actual like rest of the module, which is going to deal with the pyramid that Amun-Re is buried in.
Yeah, and I do want to point out that the temple and the pyramid are connected to one another, because there's like, there's sort of like section 1 of temple, section 2, or section 2 of temple, section 3 of pyramid, inside pyramid. But yeah, they're all kind of like, it's basically like if you in the player's handout, you could see that it's this golden pyramid sort of complex thing, and in front of the complex is basically the temple. So that's it gets. I was a little confused when I first just read this without looking at all of the pieces, because there's like, the first part is especially because I don't understand why there's a sunken city of Pazar. Like, why do I even care about that? And really, it's because it's going to matter. Like, if you did that first, it would sort of tell you a little bit more of what happens. I think we forgot to talk about that. Like, in one of the rooms, is it the temple? No, wait. Is it the temple that you get it? No, I think it's in the tome of Amun-Re is in there. Where's the tome?
Oh, right. Was that I thought that's in the temple.
I thought that was in the sunken city.
Because I know the thing is carrying a tome.
Well, maybe, yeah, you know what? Maybe it is page 11. It is page 11. Never mind. Yeah, the tome is in the... Okay, never mind. So I don't even know why we go to the sunken temple thing.
So I think we'll find this out later, because spoilers, we're going to do the whole Desert of Desolation series. But I think
part of
that pasha shows up later. Because it does mention... I don't know if I could find it. But it does mention something about like, hey, if you're doing this, you want to make sure they get to that temple. Where is it? Thought I remember seeing it in the monologue. Or the introduction. I can't find it right now, but I think that the sunken city of Pazar is probably like more relevant if you do the other adventures. Of note as well with the pyramid on the last, like on the cover, the back cover where it has the maps, there's a really cool cross section that just totally explains how the pyramid works.
Yeah, and it's just like the Great Temple in Giza, or very similar sort of idea.
Yeah, so it is. It's really, really cool. And it includes like the area, it kind of maps out like the 3 areas that the modules take place in. So you can kind of like mentally know, like you go through Pharaoh, and then the next part is the Oasis of the White Palm, and then etc.
Right.
The first thing I want to know that I looked this up because so you approach the pyramid, and it basically says it's huge, barely touched by the height of time. It is a 745 feet square at the base and rises to a height of 700 feet. So that made me wonder, how tall is the tallest pyramid in Egypt? And the Great Pyramid of Giza is 450 feet tall.
Oh, wow.
So this is like close to twice as big as the biggest pyramid in Egypt. So just take the Great Pyramid of Giza and then multiply it by twice, and that's how big this thing is.
That's huge.
Yeah, it's massive. Completely massive. So as you get into the temple, so the way that you enter is through a temple, and then you get into the actual pyramid itself. So there is the first thing you run into is a fountain that gives you some pretty interesting details. So it is a dried basin that's empty. It's a dried at this point, like it was used as a fountain at some point. So basically the lore tells you that this is the fountain of Athos. After the construction of the pyramid, irrigation water for the entire valley sprang from this source. It was originally filled by a teleportation spell that moved an incredible volume of water from the pyramid to this spot. So it kind of tells you like, hey, they were actually pretty magically advanced. They teleported their irrigation.
Yep.
Which is like a very early D&D thing. I especially think that because of the simulationist stuff D&D was very interested. Early D&D seems to be very interested in how like magic would affect things like this.
Yeah, it is really interesting, and if you do actually finish it, the spell goes. It tells you the spell goes off. Teleporting waters start coming back, and all the water and stuff fills the valley again.
So in the temple, you're gonna meet, if you haven't met the Thune dervishes yet, you will meet them here because the temple is filled with them. And basically, my interpretation of the Thune dervishes is that they are kind of like religion super fans, and they want everyone to worship a religion, and they don't care what it is, and they protect any temple.
Yes, that is my understanding as well.
So now you're in an interesting dilemma where the person that owns the temple told you that you need to raid this temple to free him, but you have this faction of people that will fight anyone that raids a temple.
Right.
So, like, what do the players do here? Do they have a conversation to say, like, hey, I swear the ghost of this place told me to loot it. I'm telling you, like, it's true.
And they're going to be like, sure it did.
I also just want to get into, like, the use of the word dervish, because I think it gets misused a little bit. I will say I thought dervish meant like a warrior, and I will admit the reason for that is the magic card Whirling Dervish, which is a really old magic card that was actually like quite strong and was used in many decks, or at the time anyways. And it depict the art is like a guy on a horse with the sword, so I was like, oh, the word dervish must mean like warrior or something. But basically, the word dervish is just, as far as I can tell, it's like a person that takes a vow of poverty, or like a religious vow.
Oh, okay.
There's some documentaries on it, specifically about whirling dervishes, which is, the thing I was just saying is not, a whirling dervish is not like a warrior. It's basically a religious practice of dancing in a specific fashion where you like circle in a counterclockwise. There's like a few documentaries on YouTube about it, but like there's probably some better words to use here because I think they kind of tend to avoid things that like have modern religious practices. But yeah, it's just the use of the word dervish, I actually think they wouldn't use that word currently in that manner. But I mean, it is kind of maybe accurate because these people probably took some sort of vow of poverty.
I think it's more of the religious one, like they're sworn to a religion. And in this case, sort of like, that you need to have a religion. Yes,
so they just want people to worship, and they don't care what religion it is. At least in the back of the book, that's kind of what it says. But I think that's on this page. That's all I had to talk about.
Yeah, it's when you get to the next page. That's when it gets interesting.
Yeah, so on page 11, we get to the high altar. The high altar of Amun-Re. This is where you run into 5 dervishes standing around the altar, carefully studying wall carvings. The holy, there's a large white book with platinum fittings on the altar that is important.
And the holy Lasida.
Yeah, the holy Lasida. I don't know what that means. What does that mean?
Stop time.
Hey everyone, dropping in from the future to say I cannot find a definition for Lasida anywhere. The only thing that I could find is seda in Spanish is silk. So this could be like the silk or a reference to that, but I highly doubt it based on the context. The only other reference I see to this is actually in the Forgotten Realms wiki for this particular module. So it just is, I guess, what the Thune dervishes call their clerics. Anyways, back to the podcast.
Time begins to move.
So yeah, the authors like clearly know that you want to plunder this tomb. And you can't because there's like really interesting tension here between the NPCs and the players.
Yeah, and to further it, the Holy Lasida has the book that you really, really want, and is not going to give it to you or doesn't want to give it to you. So he will not knowingly release the book out of his hand. So he has it in his hands, and he will not give it to you. So there's a lot of tension here because the tome, you really need that tome, and he's not going to let you have it. Or at least it seems like.
Yeah, and the dervishes are all HD 4 with 1 attack, so they're not like... I think a D&D party could probably easily slay them if they wanted to go that way. But they are like lawful neutral, and some parties might not just want to kill them. So that's like some interesting tension, considering all the other modules we've read have just been like, the things in this room are here to be slayed.
Right.
So already, like, the writing style is, first of all, this is a more like contemporary type of situation you would find yourself in current D&D. So this kind of trope might have moved forward through time, and we kept it. But this is like a much different approach at module writing.
Yeah. I mean, you can go and just kill them all, but then that also sets you on a certain course, too, because you're going to find more of these dervishes. So if there's some way that you can, like, say, charm person, the Lacida, whatever, then that might be your best chance. Might be the best thing. But you don't know that.
Yeah, you could maybe like wait till they go to sleep and sneak in at night and grab it, or at some point. But the tome is actually the Tome of Amun-Re, and written inside of it is basically the back of the book has the Tome of Amun-Re section.
Yeah, on page 31, there's basically, the entire page is set with 16 different verses from the book that tell you, the history of what, this whole, of what's going on and what happened. It's like all the lore, which is, also unique for its time. You're really showing a lot of new, like, hey, there's like a bunch of lore to figure out like what happened here.
Yes, and it is written in a manner that is not intended for the players. Like, this is not intended where you like give them a handout and say, okay, you get all of this at once. It's basically every night there's a base 20% chance per character to correctly read each verse. So they basically say like 1 through 10, there's
16 different verses.
16 verses, because there's the Book of Amun-Re and the Tale of Years, which is like two different sections of the book. So you have to basically say, like, you point at a section and you say, I would like to try to read this, and then you have a 20% chance of reading it. So it's not intended to be read at once.
Yeah.
It's intended to be paced through the encounter.
Well, through the whole adventure.
Yeah. The too long didn't read of this whole thing is the river of Athos was fertile, and the city was like blossoming as a civilization. And there's like a rule that if you're buried as a king and someone plunders your tomb, you don't make it to the afterlife. So all of the kings are like super obsessed with making theft-proof tombs because they don't want to be kicked out of the afterlife because their tomb was disrespected.
Right.
His father, Amun-Re's father, had a staff of ruling. So in his speech in the tome, it says that Amun-Re worked with a mage to make his burial chamber theft-proof, because if someone steals from your tomb, you don't make it into the afterlife. And then in the monologue, he talks about Osiris, says, hey, because you were so mad, like terrible to your people, I'm doing the opposite, and that you will not go to heaven until someone raids your tomb, because you basically sold out your people, to make your tomb theft-proof. And there's something like the tome also contradicts a little bit of what the monologue says, because the Tale of Years says that the tomb was plundered, but the curse is still in effect. So there's something weird going on.
Right.
So it sounds like the Amun-Re is not like an omniscient person. He doesn't have the full picture. He just knows that what Osiris told him. But yeah, your players are going to be chewing on that tome for a while. And I think that's pretty cool. I like that it's paced that way.
Yeah, I mean, that way you don't get all the information at once and you got to go sort of figure it out piece by piece.
Yeah, I also suspect most players will read it in order. So
yeah,
basically you just roll a 20% chance per night, and then that's how many passages you move forward.
I also think that the next room is really funny because like it's basically a statue of Osiris with gems, and if you want the gems because you like to steal stuff, and if you do, and you haven't like killed all the dervishes, they're going to be very mad at you if you encounter them again, because you can't steal stuff off of statues.
Yeah, it also does give you like, it kind of knows that players will try to do it anyways, so it does give you some rule that so basically if there's no dervish present, there's a 15% cumulative chance per turn that a dervish will appear and notice.
I love that
you steal the gems. So like they really want you to be in conflict with these dervishes. Like they're like making a boiling it's like the frog in the kettle boiling.
Because next you have the worship room, and then you get to the priest quarters. And like you've only met like 5 dervishes, and then that one, and then maybe you meet another dervish. In this room are 27 dervishes.
Yep. So there's a lot here. It's kind of like a base camp for them in a way.
Yeah.
Which makes sense because like the desert is very there's like terrible dust storms and stuff, so and acid rain. So it's like of course they want to be inside this temple.
So you may have been like, oh, I've been saving the dervishes. It's been cool. And then like, I stole those gems off of the Eyes of Osiris. And then all of a sudden you turn the corner and like, there's 27 dervishes. Like, oh.
I also do want to note that it says any dervish witnessing such an act as of, stealing the gems will mark the characters that removed the gems for a blood quest. And it does mention in the dervish patches, we didn't talk about this. It says, if a character steals or damages a holy item under the eyes of one of these dervishes, the entire clan will mark that character for blood quest. This holy rite, carried out under the trembling, vibrating scream of any dervishes at hand, means a fight to the death. If the dervishes find any shrine damage, they will use their considerable tracking powers to hunt down and destroy the evil one. 1 to 6 dervishes will typically carry out this function. Thune dervishes have the tracking abilities of rangers. So, like, they do not forget or forgive if you do this.
Yep.
And they will try to find you. They will spend effort to try to find you and track you down.
I mean, I guess you have access to fireball, so 27 dervishes aren't terrible, but still, though, you're just sort of, you're now at odds with them, and it's going to be like a bunch of mass murder, so.
Yeah, and most of these dervishes, like, it goes through their HP, like, they have, like, 2, 7, 1, 3, 1, 2, 10. Like, a lot of these are going to die in a single weapon attack.
Yeah.
So I'm just curious how many parties were just like, this is annoying, we want to loot the treasure. It just killed all the dervishes. I bet you that was fairly common. I do also just wanted to point out the worship room. There's nothing in here. It just says, long neglected, this room gives out a slight herbal smell and appears empty. There's like a lot of rooms in this dungeon that are just normal rooms that don't have any treasure or anything in them, which is the opposite of like a lot of what we've seen in previous modules. Yeah. Like a room needs some sort of reason to go in it. It's just like kind of goes against contemporary design, because I think that would say like everything you put, all the text on the page that you put, like everything room has to have a purpose. And like the purpose here is to just let you know that this is a normal place people live in.
Right.
Which I thought is a cool little touch.
Yeah, and a room doesn't have to have a thing in it. It could just be a room because, people live here, they do stuff. Right now, they're not using this room for anything.
Yeah. Okay, so the way that this dungeon is set up, you go through the temple, and then the next section is called the Plundered Tombs. And the Plundered Tombs has 3 different branches that you could go into. So you walk forward, and you're in the main worship hall, I think. You walk into the main worship hall, and then there is the West Offering Temple and East Offering Temple, and that's the only thing that you could go into. So there's a bit of a clever ruse here. So this is constructed as, this entire pyramid is constructed as this area, the plundered tomb, is fake. It is intended to make it look like this is the real tomb and all the treasure has been taken, so that thieves come in here, find it, and they're like, oh no, all the treasure's taken, I'm gonna leave. So if you're in the main worship hall, there's a secret door behind the statue of Amun-Re. And if you go through that, you go into it's like kind of a hallway of 4 different rooms that we could kind of get into here a little bit, because there's like there's kind of some funny things about them on the upcoming pages. Okay, so we're gonna like kind of continue on through this as if you were walking to the fake area of the dungeon. So you would walk into the main worship hall, and you would notice that there is a 20-foot tall statue of Amun-Re, and that's carved from a different stone than the rest of the walls. So it's like a hint that that's something. And then that is a secret door leading to L7, which is on the next page. That room leads you into L9.
Well, but if you're in L7, you can also go to L6 and L5. And if you're in L3, you might find the secret door behind whatever's on the west. There's like another statue, and then there's a secret door behind that. and then you could go to L3 and L6 and L7. So the way this works is it's very interesting. So you come into this main worship hall, and there doesn't look like there's any way forward. So if you go in the places where isn't a secret door, you'll see like a room that's got a lot of people in it, which is L4. That's the East Offering Temple. There's a bunch of dervishes in there, and you have to deal with them and decide, how you're going to deal with that. And then, and that's where the actual like entrance is to the real dungeon. But like on the other side, there's another room just like it on L3 that has a statue behind it. L4 also has a statue, but no secret door. That one has a secret door. And then L2, which is another room that has a statue, has a secret door behind it. So like in theory, you would search all of these rooms and go like, hey, I don't see anything. And then you probably would try to find secret doors. You would find a secret door in L2 and L3, and you'd follow either one of those. And then you'd think you're like going through the dungeon, right? So then there is a way to get to the next dungeon through L6, which is like this fountain, and I think that spills out into a Sphinx's lair, which is on the next level of the dungeon.
Yes, which is the intended path if you're doing this module to get to the real tomb.
Yeah. So, and then like there's but then you could go to the other one, which also has a well, and it may be just nothing. And then then you're going through, and you're like, okay, well, there's another secret door behind this. Every single time you see a statue, there's always a secret door behind it. So you're thinking like, oh, okay, I'll do that. And so then you plunder even more and go into this dungeon. So then like you'll go into let's see. So you go to L8, and L8 is just a sitting corridor. And then there's a great worshippers room, and then there's all of this stuff in there. There's another statue with, a secret door behind it, and it's super hard to get into. So you think like, oh, maybe that's the entrance to the next level. And then, in that L9, there's like, what is it? 6 statues, 7 statues, something like that. And so like, there's there's a secret door behind 2 of the statues. One of them leads to nothing, or, almost nothing. And the other one just leads to even further into the tomb. So you find that one. You go down a big hallway, and then you go to what seems like a treasure room and what seems like a tomb. It's very cool.
Yeah, and so there is a little bit of comedy here too, because in the plundered tomb, which is fake, the thing that's supposed to make thieves think that there's no treasure here, there's a treasure room, and I'm just going to read this because I thought it was really funny. Beyond the broken door is a huge room. The room is 20 feet tall, rising to a flat ceiling. The words treasure room are scattered into the walls in giant letters in several languages. Scattered about the room are broken pots and chests that have been hewn in half. All are covered with a thick layer of dust. So they wrote treasure room in the fake treasure room, and then broke a bunch of pots. It made it seem like it's the actual treasure
plunder. Yeah, a plundered treasure. And then like when you go to the tomb, there's just nothing in it.
Yeah. So there's also an interesting thing that the book does. So there's nothing in it, and it says lore for the fake tomb. The writing has a 30% chance of being read correctly as, and then below it is a photo, like there's art of adventurers, I guess, disappointingly looking at a plundered tomb, and then the text from the lore is like integrated into the art, and it says, "Here lies the true tomb of Amun-Re. Know that ye have arrived too late to plunder my ransom for Heaven's Gate." So it's like it integrates it into the art in a weird way that in the rest of you see it like a few times, I think, in this later on, but it's just like, I thought that was interesting. And that also could be why the tome says that it was like rated, because it was presumably written sometime after his death, and they were like, oh, that's like, I don't think many people know where the real tomb of Amun-Re is.
And I do want to point out L6. The only way you get into the next part, basically the Cordon's Master Maze, which is the maze the magic user created, or the wizard used, is through L4, which is like basically there's this bowl with the flame surge around, and you will like teleport to the. If you know what you're doing, you will teleport to Cordon's maze, which is really the next part of the dungeon. L6, which is like this fountain, is the fountain that like teleports you back to the beginning. So it'll teleport you back to because that's like what was happening is they were using that fountain to take all the water and move it into the valley. Well, now it doesn't teleport anywhere, so it just sort of sits there, but it'll teleport you back to the beginning in the temple. So
yeah, which is cool. It really illustrates that you're walking around the ruins of this like ancient civilization because that sort of mechanism is still intact.
Right.
Also, the storage vaults on the side that you go into, they have the water in them, which is a special thing. It's the water of Athos, which will restore 1d10 hit points once per day when a character drinks it. And then you can only do it once per 24 hours, but it's like super water. It's like special magic water.
Yeah. And what's also interesting is that, you've been in the desert and you haven't had any sources of water anywhere. And once you get into the plundered tomb, you have an infinite source of water, basically. Like you're always going to be hitting the waters of Athos, so you don't have to worry about water anymore, or shouldn't.
And it also states that the pyramid concentrates cosmic energy to give the water its healing power. So cosmic energy, not magic, cosmic.
Yeah. Cosmic.
And it clarifies that the water will not have any healing power outside of the pyramid, so your players can't fill a bag of holding with it and use it for the rest of their adventures.
Yeah. You don't have a capitalistic bottle. You don't become Nestle and start, bottling your water of healing.
Allegedly. Don't sue us, Nestle. Yeah, so like another, it's just funny. These early modules are like very scared of players abusing a certain thing. So back to the East Offering Temple, where that has the giant torch, essentially. The blazing, in the center of the room, a 20-foot tall statue of Amun-Re with arms outstretched holds an altar bowl of blazing fire near his chest, some 15 feet above the floor, and there's a staircase leading up to the bowl. Now, it does say if you talk to the Thunes in here, they react favorably to the party and might tell you they are offering alms to this deity. They know that their great leader entered this room after reading something in the white book indicating this was the correct entrance to the tomb. And they kind of don't know where their leader is. He came in here and disappeared. And if you read further into the tome, it does hint that the way in here is to just walk into the brazier and because the flame that's burning it's fake. It teleports you into the maze. And I don't remember what passage it specifically hints at, but I will edit that in here.
Stop time.
All offerings left in the East Temple would disappear and never be found again. Several priests, upset to see their assets disappearing, searched the room carefully, and they too disappeared. The temple became a most hallowed spot, so that all who wished to give offerings came to the temple only. The priesthood then became unprofitable, and our doctrine had to be changed. Tourism turned to the trick. Offerings were often made, for a passage was always provided between the tomb of the king and his likeness, whereby his spirit might pass into his ordained statue and live within the stone we worship here. Such a passage was always provided for the kings, that they might live amongst us once more.
Time begins to move.
So the way that you're supposed to go in is through that. The other way to go to the master maze is through... Which room was it? It was L6, right?
Well, no, L6, sorry, I misspoke. Oh. It gets you back into the start of the adventure.
Right, L6.
So it actually, yeah.
Was it Is it L5?
I was thinking of the other one, the L30. No, the only entrance is L3.
Oh, okay, yeah. Okay, so just as a clarification, the only way to go into Cordon's Master Maze is through the flames, but when we get to the next part, there's a few ways to continue on.
Yeah, there's and I was getting confused with the next section.
Gotcha. Okay. So yeah, basically what's going to happen is your players are going to walk around here. They might be like a little confused about the fake treasure room, and might have to read some passages from the tome. Presumably they're going to probably spend a few days resting here because it takes a long time to heal in AD&D. So
Yeah, it kind of depends on if they've been fighting dervishes too.
Yeah. So hopefully they spent some time and read that. But so they're going to walk into the flames in the temple, and we're going to move on to Cordon's Master Maze, which starts at page 15. So we're on page 15 in Cordon's Master Maze. My first thought was like, oh, it's another maze that is designed to confuse the mapper.
Yep.
Which is a common thing.
You're not supposed to say north, south, east, or west. You're only supposed to say left, right, straight ahead, or behind. That way you confuse everybody.
Yeah, so they're supposed to, like, you're not supposed to use cardinal directions. You're supposed to describe, like, relative to where you're standing. There's a pretty interesting, the random encounter table here is interesting. So one is a wizard that is just, he's been in here looking for magical items, and he can just walk around, and you might run into a wizard with some pretty high level spells. There is a minotaur, which of course it's a maze, so you expect a minotaur to be in it. Also, interestingly enough, the encounter refers to him as a wizard, but like we're not using the word wizard yet. We're still using magic user, so I'm just interested in like when that became the parlance.
1 second, let me look that up.
Oh, okay.
So like in the player's handbook, as you gain levels, you get a different title.
Right, there's the like...
So I can't remember...
The cut purse, and I just remember that the monk eventually becomes the Grandmaster of Flowers, which is my favorite title.
Oh yeah, no, it's great. Magic user, there we go. Yeah, you don't become a wizard until you reach 11th level. So really at 6th level, he's a magician. According to the AD&D book, he would be a magician. But, artistic license.
Yeah, so it sounds like they just... It sounds like when they got rid of the title thing, they were just like, let's just use the word wizard because that's better. I kind of like it better than magic user.
Yeah, I mean, he could have said a magician. It really does not matter.
Yeah, just a thing I was thinking about as I was reading it through.
Actually, you should be called a magician.
Actually, this is a cut purse, not a thief.
Actually.
And basically, my favorite thing that you can run into here is the doppelganger encounter.
Oh my god, the doppelgangers are great.
And it's the only encounter that it specifically gives you directions on how it works. So it says, when doppelgangers appear in a random encounter, they will take the form of their last victim as a disguise. Roll a d6 on this table to determine who the last victim is. So I guess these are people who died in this dungeon to the doppelgangers. 1, fighter elves in glistening chainmail armor. 2, dirty and cagey dwarven knights, wise to the ways of the tomb. 3, pious clerical men on the quest to free the curse. 4, wizard men come to discover the secrets of Cordon the Archmage. The doppelgangers do not actually have magical abilities, but will pretend to possess them. 5, jolly halfling thieves on an outing. And 6, haggard ranger of few words and many actions.
And what's fun is that, like, if you got the doppelgangers first, and you're like, oh, and you did fight them or something happened with them, and then, like, you met the wizard, you'd be like, he's a goddamn doppelganger.
Yeah. Show us a magic spell so we can believe you. I do like that table gives you just that little statement that it is like tells you how to roleplay them as well. Like a dirty and cagey dwarven knight that's wise.
Great.
It's not just like dwarven knight. A jolly halfling on an outing. Like that immediately tells you like how that character should be played.
Yeah.
Okay. So how to describe this part? I will say just like I would probably cut this part of the dungeon a lot. It's designed to be frustrating. You are walking around and running into just random rooms and trying to find out where you're going. But the first room that you run into, because like you were going to end up in this room when you teleport in, it's called the Welcome Room.
Not that welcoming. Just spoiler, not that welcoming.
Yeah, so you're in a room. Each wall looks the same. There's a dome at the ceiling 30 feet above the floor. A skeleton lies in the center of the room holding a sword in his extended arm above his head and points towards one of the exits. Each exit is filled with a rust orange mist that is slightly sulfuric in smell, and there's a lever set in each wall and a sign above each lever saying "Pull me" in several languages. If you lift the lever on any of the walls, a powerful magnetic field is set up in the dome, pulling armor, etc. up to the dome. Anyone flying to the dome in their armor will take 1d8 points of damage. So you turn on like this massive magnet and it just sucks everyone up that has armor on.
Fun. Not welcoming.
Okay, so there's on the next page, it talks about Cordon's Master Mist, which is the orange rust looking mist was what that was before. So this is a little weird. So when you enter it, you feel slightly lightheaded, and your mind starts wandering around as you walk. So there's some interesting things in here. So when you're in the mist, you cannot count. Like, you just cannot do it. You can't count. And you have no sense of distance while in the mist. You cannot judge distances or remember how far you traveled. So you kind of like go in this mist and you just like keep going until you're out of it.
Yeah, and so the other piece to look at is like you need to look at the map of that is Cordon's Master Maze, and it is like you could see. So this is labeled L14, and pretty much every single hallway. There's tons of hallways everywhere in this that are connecting to all these different rooms, right? And so, like, are the different places, and it's supposed to be incredibly confusing. So if you're trying to map this out, you kind of can't. You're sort of like wandering around, and I think even the DM may get really confused as to where the players are going, because if they're just going left and right and all this other stuff, it's like, I guess they're here. It could get really confusing really quickly.
Yeah, I will say that any design for like a video game or a D&D or anything like that, in my experience, where the design is like, I would like to confuse and frustrate the players, wears out its welcome very quickly, and people tend to not like it.
I mean, I think you need a little bit of it, but oh my god, it's going to be a lot.
So there's like a couple. So yeah, it's just like a giant maze, and like these mists are everywhere that confuse you. There's a few rooms I want to talk about and like some magic items. So in L14E, there's a ring in on this
of contrariness. Yeah.
Yeah. So on the floor in the center of this area is a ring that appears to be made of silver. So this is the worst magic item I've seen in any of the modules we've read. It is the Ring of Contrariness. Any character who puts on this ring will never agree with another character's ideas or actions and will take the opposite opinion whenever possible. So that's just like, that just leads to like incredibly antisocial play, and it would be super annoying. Throw that ring into Mount Doom.
What I also like is someone better have remove curse, or you're just gonna be so mad all the time.
Yeah, that would be fun for like a minute.
It does have the flying spell.
Yeah, why does contrariness have, is like that you're contrary to gravity so you can fly? Is that the joke?
I guess, and also you're just like flying around telling people no.
Yeah, like, hey, we'd like to remove the curse. Okay, I'm going to fly to the ceiling and not let you. Like,
you're not letting you do that. Whatever you do, I'm flying the ceiling. Fuck you.
Like, yeah, it just seems really like antisocial. I think cursed items are kind of a relic of D&D's past that I don't really know if I miss. I personally have stopped using them in my D&D games. I know some people like them, but like this is just, it would be obnoxious super fast.
Yeah, I would not put this magic item around unless you had a cleric or whoever that has a remove curse spell, because it's going to get old quick. If you have that character, could just end up being dead to you really quickly.
And I will say, modern D&D, if there is something that might potentially be like lead to antisocial play, they have been doing a lot of things where they put notes like, hey, you should like be cool about this.
Yeah.
Like, I think I know on the new Kinku, there's a note that's like, hey, like the whole being able to mimic things and talking that way, I know that you're going to think it's super funny to make weird noises all the time, but everyone's going to hate you at your table if you do that. So don't do that.
Yeah.
But I mean, yeah, this is also, yeah, I would just throw this ring into Mount Doom. Don't think about it. Get rid of it.
Yeah, as soon as you get that remove curse off, it is dead to you. Like, it either stays in this room or it gets thrown into the abyss. I mean, just get rid of it. That's terrible. But you can fly. Annoyingly.
And then L14L. So there is a trick / trap at the bottom of the treasure. There's some treasure chests, and then like one of them has a trick in it, a trap. When it's opened, it shoots out drug-tipped darts in an arc ranging from straight up directly in front of the chest. All characters directly in front of the chest make a dex save, and those hit must make save versus poison or be paralyzed for 1d20 turns. So it just kind of slows you down, and that can actually be a lot of turns. Like 20 turns is like what?
Yeah. Well, it's It means that like the wandering monsters are going to find you. So,
But yeah, if you roll a 20 on that, that's like 200 minutes, which is...
You're going to get wandering monsters, man.
That's like 3 hours, right? Yeah. Yeah, that's like 3-ish hours of being paralyzed.
That would suck.
Yeah, if no one could remove it. Okay. I don't really have anything else to talk about on this page. It's all kind of stuff.
No, the next page has another cursed berserking sword, which is super interesting and fun. And by fun, I mean terrible.
Yeah, so on page 17, there's an L14M. There's the missed parts to reveal a T-shaped intersection. Each branch is 10 feet long and disappears into the rust-orange mist. Strewn all about are bodies in various states of decay. In the center of the area lies the body of a man on his back with a bright and shining sword sticking through him into the stone floor. So that's some environmental storytelling right there.
So this is also an extremely annoying item. It's called Unduval because it has inscribed with Unduval and it's in the hilt. It's a cursed berserking sword. When first used in combat, will force its user to attack the nearest person to him, friend or foe, at +2 to hit with damage 1 to 8 points damage. The person holding the sword is forced to continue attacking until either his opponent or he is killed. Only an exercise or wish spell rid the player of this device. So, yeah, that could get really bad. But, okay.
Yeah, wish spell is like a lot to get rid of it.
Yeah. I don't know what exercise, I don't know what level of spell that is, but, they probably do not have it memorized.
Yeah, we could look that up right now.
Stop time.
According to the AD&D Player's Handbook, exercise is a level 4 cleric spell that negates possession of a character or object by any outside or supernatural force. A level 7 cleric should have access to this spell.
Time begins to move.
Wow, Kyle, we just discovered what level exercise is. Isn't that interesting?
Oh, that's really cool. Yeah, it's pretty, it's a level.
Thank you, future Kyle, for looking that up.
Yeah, thanks, future Kyle. You're the best.
Okay, and then, so there's the Grieving Elves, which I have notes on.
Yeah, well, there's also Ring of Protection +3. If you enter that room, you might get.
Yeah, that's a lot. With the way the armor works in this, that's like really, really good.
Yeah. It's a good, and you can wear as many rings as you want to, if I remember right.
But yeah, plus the way armor works is like +3 is so much.
Yeah.
Like what if you have plate? You're getting down into like super negatives, and I know in Baldur's Gate 1 you can get down to like -20 armor if you like really stack everything. You basically it's impossible to hit you unless they roll a 20. Right. So I do have there's the Ring of Protection +3 in one of the random rooms, and then you run into Grieving Elves. So you run into a room with bones littering the floor, and standing about the room mourning over the bones are 5 elves. Now, depending on if you've run into the doppelgangers already, you may be super suspicious of walking into a room with anyone looking like anything in this maze.
Yeah.
And guess what? They're not elves. They're actually doppelgangers. So they basically maintain their illusion of the elf until it becomes advantageous for them to attack you. So they want to lead you. They basically want to separate the party one at a time and then try to kill you and then take over is what their goal. They basically say they know their way through the maze and they try to deceive you to get through the maze.
They do not know how to get through the maze.
Yeah, they just want to confuse you. Which is like that's another. I know Dwellers of the Forbidden City had the Panlung that wanders around and tries to lie to you. So like that's another I guess another monster you shouldn't trust in the dungeon. Although this doesn't happen that much in this one, so it's just this level.
Yeah,
because you do spend time talking to like the whirling dervishes who will talk to you, and the other faction that will just come down and talk to you. And Amun-Re, he's telling what he knows to be the truth. He's not betraying you. So that's like kind of new in this adventure. And then of course there's a maze, so we have to have a Minotaur.
Yep, two. In fact, there's 2 Minotaurs and a trap.
Yeah, and is this the room? So in the Minotaur's lair, this is another way to get into they call it the halls of the upper priesthood, through the top of the Minotaur's lair. Yeah, so the underside of the trapdoor is found at the top of the shaft, which extends an additional 30 feet above the ceiling. Thieves will roll at a +10% to activate the door from the side. The door will swing down And that door leads straight up through the ceiling onto the platform in front of the statue in L52. So it takes you to the next part of the dungeon. There's another room that they just call Knock Knock, L17, that has 9 dirty and sweaty bandits that would be extremely easy for you to dispatch at this point. They all have like 2 HP.
And they're all just trying to get out. Like, that's all they really want to do.
Yeah. Notably, I think they're chaotic evil.
They are chaotic evil, and they'll join the party if they see more than 500 gold. They will basically attack the party to take the money. So they're kind of evil.
Yeah, they will betray you, but like it doesn't matter because you could easily kill them at this level. But yeah, it's basically like you get 9 retainers that are generally interested in their own well-being. So there's that. On 18, so L18 trap room, which is like kind of weird because there's traps in all these rooms. But this is a new monster to me, the Trapper. Are you aware of this?
Yeah, I've never heard of a Trapper before.
So it's a monster that lays flat like a it's kind of like the, what are they called? I had to look this up because I didn't know what they were. The dust diggers in the desert. So they lay flat. They basically look like the ground, and they lay flat like a manta ray, or those fish that like ambush things.
Yeah.
And then it tries to eat you when you walk over it. So it's like a mimic kind of that looks like the floor.
It's a trapper. It's a trapper keeper.
Yeah, it tries to trap you and keep you until it eats you.
Yeah.
So that was a new monster to me. And then here's the other way that you can get out is the Well of Questions.
Yep.
All right, so I know people have various like tolerances for riddles in D&D, so that's definitely, if you run this or you're doing riddles in your D&D game, you definitely need to get a sense of that from your players, because I know that some people hate them. Okay, so there's a Sphinx in here, and of course the Andro Sphinx, which is a male Sphinx, will make no aggressive move towards the party, and everyone knows it's a Sphinx, so you should talk to it.
It has questions.
Okay, so the Sphinx will ask the party just what they are doing here. He will then offer to answer any one question they have about the tomb, if the party will answer one of his questions. If, however, the party cannot answer correctly, he will attempt to eat them. There are many questions the Sphinx could ask, including the original Sphinx question, what walks on 4 legs in the morning, 2 legs on midday, and 3 legs in the evening.
Monkeys.
Which is a very, very old and stereotypical riddle that I think most people know the answer. Do you know the answer to that one?
Well, I did because I read it. So, yeah, I mean, it does in fact tell you the answer, so...
Oh, it does tell you the answer is a man. Never mind. I thought I was being clever. Okay.
Yeah, that's why I said a monkey is also an answer to this question, but that's okay.
Yeah, I don't really like that riddle that much.
An ape. A monkey.
Here's another one that you can also try this one.
All the people who live west of Bindon lie all of the time. All of the people who live on the east side of Bindon tell the truth all the time. Yet during the day, both types of people traffic on both sides of the town, and it is physically impossible to tell the Westenders from the Eastenders. Siders, sorry. If you get lost in Bindon, which one question could you ask that would tell the correctly which side of the town you were on? Okay,
so obviously, like, my first thought is the movie Labyrinth, which has a very similar question. And it made me wonder, when did that come out? That came out in 1986.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, I know this is probably from, a book of riddles or something, but did, like, the people that made Labyrinth play Pharaoh? Is that a possibility? I think that might maybe have been. This was a popular adventure. Yeah, so the key question is you have to ask one question to determine if they're lying and where you're at is the part of the riddle. Because when I read that, I was like, well, I would just tell if they're lying by asking, like, how many fingers I'm holding up or something. Like, am I holding up 3 fingers? Yes or no? But you have to figure out a question that will tell you if they are lying and what side of town you were on. So the question to ask is, do you live here? Because if you're on the east side, the answer will always be yes, regardless of who you ask, and the opposite will be true if you're on the west side. I would have never figured this out. I would fight this Sphinx. There's no way I would have come up with that question answer. But you could look up in a book of riddles some interesting riddles. Find one. I don't know. I I like riddles when they're good.
There's also a thing where he'll like a wrong answer will provoke the Sphinx to attack immediately. There's a 30% chance, minus the charisma of the asking player, that the Andro Sphinx will lie. So it'll attack anyway. So cool.
Also, just like a question. I think this is weird because it's listing the Andro Sphinx as chaotic good, but like, shouldn't Sphinxes be lawful? Like, their whole thing is riddles and like that. Why are they chaotic? That doesn't make any sense to me.
I don't know either.
Yeah, I question Sphinxes being lawful or chaotic. So actually, I'm going to look up the history of lawful and chaotic for Sphinxes right now.
Stop time.
In the AD&D Monster Manual, the Andro Sphinx is listed as chaotic good, but the Creo Sphinx and the Gyno Sphinx are neutral. The Hirako Sphinx is chaotic evil. The second edition Monster Manual is the same, as well as the second edition revised Monster Manual. The fourth edition D&D Monster Manual removed standard alignments and just has Sphinxes listed as unaligned. The fifth edition 2014 one only lists the Andro and Gyno Sphinx, which are both lawful neutral. The 5th edition 2024 Monster Manual removed these types of Sphinxes and replaced them with 4 specific ones that guard specific types of things. There's the Sphinx of Wonder, which is lawful good, the Sphinx of Secrets, which is lawful neutral, the Sphinx of Lore, which is lawful neutral, and the Sphinx of Valor, which is lawful neutral.
Time begins to move.
Oh, that was interesting. So there's another way to get into the next part of the dungeon. The Sphinx is standing, and there's like a really good side picture that tells you how this room works. But the Sphinx is standing over a well that you can swim down into and then go under and come up into the next part of the dungeon. So this is another way to get through the dungeon. And you can ask the Sphinx a question and it will answer truthfully. So like, I feel like, hey, how do I continue on is probably like the next, like a pretty obvious question if your players are lost. So this does give you an out if your players are lost and they just need someone to talk to that actually knows how to get out.
Unless it, of course, attacked you. So
yeah, and then so this room, the Minotaur room, and then there's another room coming up called the X room, are the only 3 ways to get out of this maze into the next part of the dungeon. And I actually there's that, and there's sorry, I missed one. There's the Pole Forest, which I think also does it as well. Yeah. So there's multiple ways. Your players are going to basically walk around until there's 7 total ways to get to the next part. So there's a lot of rooms in this maze. We don't need to talk about all of them, but the one last one I want to bring up is the Dervish Explorers in L23. So you will run into the dervishes that the previous dervishes explained came into this room. They're actually been wandering around, and you encounter them in this room. They will basically threaten to fight you. If you attack them, they will fight. If not, then they will basically join you. However, having the dervishes as a ally is a ticking time bomb, because as soon as you pick up a single gold piece, they will blood quest you and try to kill you.
right.
So as if I don't know if they are a good ally to take on.
Well, at that point, you're not going to be able to loot much or anything.
So after you leave the maze, which is I'm going to be honest, the worst part of this adventure, you will go to the Halls of the Upper Priesthood, which is way better, and I like. So, and I actually put in my reading through this, I took notes, and on the entry room in the Halls of the Upper Priesthood, I put, I am glad to be done with that maze. And I'm not even playing it, I was just reading it.
Yeah, and I was looking at the maze itself and trying to read it and going like, this is so confusing.
One thing that I really do like, so don't need to go through all the random encounters, but when you first look at it, it will say, there's wraiths and ghouls and wights here. So I hope you like level drains.
Yeah, I was also, when I was reading that, I was like, oh god, this is going to be such a pain in the ass.
And then for those who aren't familiar, old D&D, a lot of those monsters level drain you, so they will take your levels away from you, which is always like that kind of left. D&D now does that by making you lose HP, but they don't do level drains anymore because it's just like logistically, even people hate it anyways, but it's like logistically a pain in the ass to deal with.
I mean, there's the restoration spell, or whatever it's called. I forget that. I think that's what it's called. So you can go back to the level, but at the lowest level of XP that you had, which is like insane. But there's a way to get it back. But, if you don't have those scrolls, I remember being in a Curse of Strahd game, like the original one, and it just being like, we ran out of those scrolls so quickly. We had like 4 of them, and it's like, okay, well, I think we ended up stopping play because we kept on getting level drained so much that it was just like, I started at level 5 and I was at level 2.
Yeah, it's just not. It not only does it feel bad, it's just like it's so logistically like, okay, how much HP do I lose? How much it's just annoying.
It is.
Even now with like online tools where you could probably just de-level yourself really easy, I think people don't want to do it, and it just feels bad to lose experience. Like much. Even video games that make you lose experience don't do that anymore. Oh, here it is. Yeah. So entry. One thing I really like about this entry that like really like encapsulates like, hey, you are done with that maze, is this is a 10-foot wide arched corridor with a compass rose carved clearly in the floor. So you go from that entire area where you can't use cardinal directions to like the first room is here's where the cardinal directions are.
Like you're done.
So on the next page, 21, we're still in the halls of the upper priesthood. Very interesting room, the Dome of Flight in the garden hall.
We do want to talk about the fruity flies.
Yeah, so Kyle, what's going on in the garden hall?
So there's bowls of fruits. There's basically like little leafy they're basically like fruit flies that are basically fruit. And if you eat the fruit, you gain a bunch of buffs, which is great. So it's like these flies are flying around that are fruit, and if you actually eat the fruit, you gain a bunch of stuff. It is very amusing to me. It's basically a nice way to sort of buff your characters in the party before you get to a lot of the other stuff going on in there.
Well, it's also nice too because you have been wandering through the desert and you might be missing food at this point. And yeah, so it's like a bowl of fruit. There's 50 fruity flies. It's a bowl of fruit. And like basically when you approach it and attempt to eat it, it turns into a fly. You have to like catch it.
Totally fun.
And if you eat it, you get +2 strength and +1 dexterity for an hour.
Yeah, pretty good.
It does note that they will rot within minutes of being exposed to sunlight, so you can't just take them out of the temple because...
Yeah, you can't. Yeah.
We are, there's 50 of these. The first thing players are going to want to do is put them in their bag of holding for later.
Yep.
So the next room is the Dome of Flight, which is like there. So first of all, this image of like the side view of how this room works just like immediately explains any questions that you have about this room. So I love that they include that. I want more. Verticality is hard in D&D, and I want more of that in adventures.
Yeah.
So it's an octagonal room. There's a lit dome at the top and a waterfall cascading down the southern side of the room. So a notable thing is there's palm trees in this room, and the trees are grenade palms.
Yep.
They're 33 feet tall, and they have fruit that looks like pineapples. However, if you disrupt the trunk of the tree, it will drop the pineapples, and there is a 95% chance that they will explode when it hits the ground, dealing 2 to 16 points of damage, so 2d8, to those within a 10-foot range.
And you can try to pick them and carry them, but it's going to be hard.
Yeah, and I guess you could use them as a weapon, but they seem like very volatile. Like you don't want to carry them around. Because it says whenever the character carrying them falls or otherwise bumps the fruit accidentally, it will explode. So you can't really take them. There's also an interesting puzzle in here. So there are 4 different panels with the words turn in, lagra, regra, and neg. So turn in is turn on. Lagra is low gravity. Regra is reverse gravity. Neg is negate, so it cancels any of the effects. And the way this puzzle works is that you can reverse gravity the room and fly to the top of it, and then you can get out to the next area of the dungeon if you get to the top.
Yes.
Assumably, also, like, if you reverse gravity in the room, then the grenade palms will also be a problem. And there's no real way of, like, knowing what these words do until you press the buttons. So you're just going to have to, like, press stuff until you figure it out.
Yep.
And it does actually tell you in the lore, too, that it's not just, like, a random puzzle that like, hey, we did this randomly because a lot of dungeons will be like, yeah, the dwarves built this and they were weird, so they did this weird puzzle for no reason. But this basically says this was like a hoist. So it's like how they got things. They used the reverse gravity to bring the heavy sarcophagus into the tomb. So there's like an actual reason for this trap, which is really cool.
Yeah, no, I like that they explain, like, why does this room exist this way? And it's like, oh, okay, because they wanted to haul things up to the next room or to the next level.
Yeah, this seems like one of the more memorable rooms of the dungeon. Like, I feel like if I ran through this would be like what I remember is the grenade palms.
It's great.
Okay, so there's a lore dump on page 22.
Yeah.
The March of the True Faith. So you enter a 10-foot wide passage with a 20-foot that is 20 feet tall. Writings cover the walls and ceilings. There are 2 verses on the ceiling and another 8 on the walls. So this refers to the character Munafik, which is in the tome that you get earlier. That has the what happened to Amun-Re. And it basically says that like Munafik somehow got eternal life and he turned all the other priests into wraiths. So all the wraiths that you find on this, like the idea is the priests were like buried with Amun-Re, like in ancient Egypt, but he somehow turned them into wraiths.
Yeah, well, the idea was that like these priests were sort of going to take care of, for life, for the rest of their lives, they were going to like take care of the tomb, I guess, and make sure no one got in there, and they were going to make sure everything was okay, and they were going to get food from the. I think this gets explained later on. I think, so that there's like food and stuff that the people were supposed to bring them, but when like everything got turned off, and the whole thing went away. There's nobody to feed any of them. So the Manafik was like, I know a way that we can be here forever.
Yeah, and he also found, like through, I guess, dark magic, I don't know, he found a way, and this is going to become relevant later, he found a way to basically remove his heart and place it elsewhere and become, like, immortal unless his heart is damaged. And that will come up later. And then also, it does know, the last thing it says is, Munafik now is second only to Osiris himself, and he has claim on the rule of Amun-Re, which is like, it's like, why is this in the temple? And you find out that the verses were written by a priest who served Munafik, so it's like a very unreliable narrator in a way, because it's like someone who's a thrall of his. And yeah, he magically placed his heart into a jar, which will become a problem later.
Yeah, that's going to be an issue. You're going to meet him. He's still alive. The next room on page 22 is the female paladin, who has no name. Not sure why.
Yes, a monster, a female paladin.
There's 8 ghouls she's fighting. Remember, you've been dealing with doppelgangers this entire time, too, so you're not sure whether or not this paladin is a paladin. But needless to say, there's a paladin there, and she needs rescuing from 8 ghouls.
Yes, so she will join a party that has no evilly aligned people. She does not know the way out of the tomb, but she does say that a desert spirit begged her to plunder his tomb.
Yep.
So she also saw the ghost of Amun-Re, so it's like more evidence that he just like does this to anyone that's in the desert. So, if I would probably put some like random adventurers that he sent into the temple that are dead if I was doing this. But yeah, that's potentially a pretty powerful ally. L50 is the high priest is prisons. The East High Priest's cell. There is Barithel, True Death, a +1 sword that's +4 against dead.
Yeah, there's 2 rooms in here that are your favorite things, which is that, you have the weapons or the items that you need in order to defeat the things that are there. So not only is there Barithel, the True Death, which is a +4 against undead, but also in the next room is a potion of undead control against whites.
I kind of forgive the potion a little bit, but the sword is like, come on, guys. So yeah, I don't like the designs where it's the thing that kills the thing in the room that you're in. It's like, why is this here?
And then L52 is super fun because they have an illustration where basically like, if the trap makes you go back down to L16, well, basically all the way back down into the dungeon. So you could, in theory, move yourself all the way back at the beginning of the dungeon and try to figure out how to get back in. So there you go.
That would be a pretty funny thing to do. I do think that if I did that, I would be like, yeah, you could just like fly back up. But like the like reveal of like you're back in the maze again is probably kind of funny. Also, notably, isn't AD&D like really into clerics not using edged weapons? Why is there a sword in the cleric's cell?
Well,
the NPCs can use edged weapons, I guess.
Yeah.
That's another take against the I really dislike the weapon of killing the thing of the room that you're in. It just feels like they really wanted to put that there.
52 also has a trap that's super fun where if you move if you remove the, let's see, falling characters, there's a gemstone. So if you take the gemstone, basically a horrendous noise like a foghorn goes off, and you have to destroy the statue, or it'll just keep going, and random monsters will start showing up a lot, which is super fun.
Yeah, like early AD&D seems to love alerting other monsters that you're in the dungeon. It's a very common thing that we've run into. Not as obnoxious as other dungeons, but kind of funny. I do like that. All right, so on to 24. So this is the Gauntlet. Oh, also, just before we go on to the Gauntlet, one thing I thought was really, really cool flavor is there's the observation domes. So there is 7 domes, because this is above the maze.
Oh, yeah, right.
So there's 7 different domes that you can see down into the maze, and basically clerics on this level would just watch thieves get trapped in there and die as like part of their entertainment.
Yep, because you got to have something to do. So
to pass the idle hours watching the death of grave robbers.
Yay!
So that's a really cool detail. All right, so into the next area is called the Gauntlet. So it gives you a pretty, like, one of the funniest little character encounters. So on page 25, so when you get into the high dome, you will run into a monster. When a stone is moved, Prit will appear as a squirrely little gnome with a spoon in his hand. He speaks with a lisp. He has been happily busy tunneling through these ruins with a spoon for many years. So you meet Prit the gnome, not even interested in like treasure or anything. He just wants to explore. And he's just digging through this place with a spoon.
Little more than the unsung history of spoons in architecture. That's what he knows about.
Okay, so yeah. And then in that, there's the entry corridor. There's a 20-foot long corridor that runs at a 25-degree angle. And then there's runes on the door which say, "Beyond these doors lies the test of the Pharaoh. Turn now from this doom of power and evil from a heartless man. Great and awful is the horror beyond these doors. Yet, if you turn away what lies beyond, you will never know." And that's the reason why this is called the Gauntlet, because this room kind of sucks.
So there is a concealed door in 54. So the entrance has a concealed door. That's what that little C is. And if you don't find that concealed door, so behind that concealed door is the entrance to the Heart's Lair. Mm-hmm. So that's where Monophig, who we were talking about before, that's where his heart's at. So if you don't know to do that, you will basically get through all of this and you will find Monophig, who is he's at the end, right? He's at the end?
Yeah, he's at the end of the Gauntlet. He's basically at the top of the Gauntlet, and he like flings spells at you the entire time.
Yeah, so if you haven't done that, he's indestructible. You can't kill him. So, we're going to go through this whole thing of all of these, like the Gauntlet itself, which is in and of itself, without him, is a pain in the butt. But with him, it is pretty difficult. And to find out that you can't affect him unless you've actually done something to the heart. So, here we go.
Yeah, so if you explore around, if you find that concealed room and kill the heart, then this is like a way easier encounter.
This is way easier.
And I actually think, let me read the heart room really quick. Doesn't it say something like all the wraiths also die?
Yeah, it's like all the wraiths die. Yeah, if the players have destroyed Monophig's heart in area L64, which is where the concealed room is, all of the monsters here will be dead. Otherwise, the monsters Monophig will attack magically from the top platform. Yeah, okay.
So basically, this Gauntlet, when you go in, it is 100 feet long. The hallway is 100 feet long. It's 30 feet tall and 30 feet wide. And you it goes 25 degrees up. So you basically have to climb up these stairs to go towards him. Monophig is at the end. He is a
10th level magic user. Well, his spells are at a 10th level magic.
Yeah, so you can use the following spells as a 10th level magic user. Protection from good, magic missile, push, so you can just push you back. Comprehend languages, forget, levitate, web, fireball, lightning, slow, tumble, animate, polymorph self, animate dead, and distort distance. So he's just going to pester you with fireballs the entire time you're climbing up this Gauntlet. The first thing you run into in the Gauntlet is so you're going to run up the stairs. The first monsters you're going to run into are the Chabang Men. They look thin and drawn, holding swords. They are magical creations of Munafik and will die when Munafik dies. When any cutting blow hits them, it will cut clear through them. The severed parts in the original will dissolve into a pile of mud and then suddenly spring up as two Chabang men. So if you cut them, they become two.
They only have, they just basically they just keep on showing up more and more and more. It's like, if you don't figure this out, that like, you can't affect him, you can't affect these Chabang men, like, you need to do, something else needs to happen. Like, you kind of need to tell, somebody that, like, maybe there's something you're missing.
Yeah, this makes me just think of, like, the scene in Army of Darkness where Ash gets attacked by the little Ash guys. That's, like, what this eventually will become if you keep cutting them in half. I mean,
you're because they don't have any hit points. They're 5 hit die creatures. They do 1d8 damage, and they don't die. They just keep multiplying every time that you sever a limb. So, yeah.
Yeah, they don't give you HP. It just says HP NA. I think they give you HD 5 just in case like some spells care about that. They're just going to sit there and be super obnoxious. The next thing you run into is the firewall. Where a wall of fire suddenly descends from the ceiling, roaring and heating the room unbearably. Neither cold nor water will lessen the flame, because it is an illusion. So it does 1d points of damage to anyone who believes the flame is real and attempts to cross it, so you have to save. So you have to save versus spells.
Yeah.
And then you also run into a stone wall, which is also an illusion. And if you run into the wall thinking it's real, you will take a d6 point of d6 damage.
Yes.
And that's not it, because you continue on to Mirror Mirror. As each party member steps into the accessway, a monster will appear, an exact likeness of each character that steps onto the platform.
And remember, like, you may not have I don't know how you've dealt with the Chabang men.
Yeah, they're still chasing you and getting cut in half.
So they might still be chasing you, getting cut in half. Or maybe you've somehow frozen them in place or charmed them. I don't know.
Web them or something and run is probably the only answer.
Yeah. If you have not obviously killed.
And then the exact likeness of each character, except with armed the same, except for magical weapons and armor. It's just normal, mundane stuff. The likenesses of magic users and clerics do not know any spells. So you just hope that you have magic users and clerics, because like a fighter is going to be obnoxious when you step on this.
The next one is the Pet Fist.
Yeah, the Pet Fist, which is actually on the map. If you look, there's a giant fist, which is a construct that strikes at you. And then Munafik, he's there, like, he won't die if you try to kill him and you haven't dealt with his heart.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, like, he can run out of spells and then run away. But, like, if you get to that point, it's sort of like,
Yeah, but do they actually run out of spells, or do they just keep casting these spells because he's a monster?
Well, he's a 10th level magic user, so at some point in time he's going to run out of spell slots.
Also, there is, the physical copy, there is a note that I have that's like a little star next to Munafik, and it says Nyx. I don't know what that is, but if you did that in your Pharaoh book, I have it now.
Okay. But yeah, I think you just,
Easy TPK if you don't do that sequence correct, like in the right order, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, and he could still be following you everywhere, doing 1d6 damage to you every turn if he runs out of spell slots. And you're somehow still alive, which I don't know how you are, but you are. So that's a thing.
Yeah, I feel like you would run in. I mean, if you explored, you probably would find the heart. I feel like the Prit, who you talked to earlier, might know something about the heart too.
Yeah, I think it's also a matter of, like, you start the gauntlet and you're like, so it looks like these things won't take any damage, and then you can't seem to do any damage to them. You can't seem to do any damage, and someone probably shoots him, and like he doesn't seem to take any damage. You got to tell him, like, there's something going on here, or they're just going to wipe.
Yeah, I think at some point the players would turn around and be like, nothing's happening, run away.
Yeah, something's wrong here. We can't get fireballed this many times.
All right, so when you get past that whole gauntlet, we go to number 26, page 26. Which takes us to the pillars on the other side, right? 57. L57. Okay. I'm sure you're going to want to talk about this room for the same reason I want to talk about it. So the Pillar of Athos is on the other side. In the center of the curved area, a column of water thunders down from a circular opening in the ceiling into a matching opening in the floor. The column of water is 10 feet in diameter. The common speech symbol for question mark is engraved in the floor in front of The opening in the floor. Anyone verbally asking a question will trigger the trap. So if you ask any sort of question, a deep, watery voice will speak from the pillar and ask 3 questions. If any of the questions is answered with a lie, the character will be struck by lightning for 1d8 points of damage. So it asks, what is your name? And then it asks, what is your quests? And then, on what hallowed ground stands ye? So this is a reference to Monty Python and the Holy Grail, right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Without question.
This is the Bridge of Death in Monty Python and the Holy Grail.
Right.
Which I did look up, did come out before this. I couldn't remember when that came out, but...
Oh, yeah, no, it's definitely there. This is absolutely Monty Python and the Holy Grail.
Yeah, so you have to give your name truthfully, which is like kind of a funny thing. If they're like, "What's your name, Bob?" You get hit by lightning. Like that's pretty funny.
Well, and but if you don't, like anyone who verbally asks a question will trigger the trap. So if you ask a question of the question, will end up starting all over again, which is funny, which is also a very Monty Python thing, right? Because like that's what happens in Monty Python, right? Like he says, wait, no, blue, no, wait, and like, yeah, so you starts all over again. It's very funny.
African or European, I don't know.
Yeah.
And then whose hallowed ground stand ye? So the answer is Amun-Re. And then it will ask you to put, if you do all 3 of those correctly, which is like obviously the first 2 you should be able to get without an issue. It says, put thy hand in mine. Anyone of good or neutral alignment that puts their hand in the wall will cause the water pillar to run backwards up into the ceiling, which is how you get to the tomb of Amun-Re, which is kind of cool. The water goes backwards, and you have to get in the water through the water, which I think is cool. Evil aligned people may safely enter the water if it has been turned on by a good aligned person. So I guess like if you don't have a good aligned person in the party, good or neutral, if everyone's evil, then you're screwed.
Yeah, pretty much.
However, if you are evil, in the reading room in L58, which is connected to this, there is the book, The Librum of Ineffable Damnation. Any evil magic user who reads this book will advance to the midpoint of the next highest experience level.
Pretty nice.
Yeah, if I was making this, I would probably remove the magic user part and just let any evil character. But yeah, I guess there is an award for, you get an award for being good and evil. in this area.
And then the rest of and it's kind of funny because the rest of it is just like, this is where, people live. All the rest of the rooms are like, this is where people live.
More room dressing of like, this is an actual place that people lived, which I think is a good design. Like it makes things feel more real.
And the last room is the Heart's Lair where, that's where you sort of wish you'd gone, probably before you tried to Gauntlet. That's where the heart is. You destroy the heart, you kill Menefek, and all the monsters are gone. So that makes it a much easier Gauntlet.
Yes, and then we go up the reverse waterfall, and we finally made it into the Tomb of Amun-Re.
And the Tomb of Amun-Re is only 1 page.
It is 1 page. It is a straight hallway, and there is no random encounters.
Nope.
So the Treasury of the Pharaohs is a weird room.
Yeah, the Pharaoh's True Way is like nothing. Hey, you just walk through some torches. And then there's the Treasury of the Pharaohs, and it's like, what? It is basically the when you first opened up this module, not the cover, but, the first page with the illustration, that's what you're looking at. That's the reason why they did this. Yeah,
it is pretty evocative, because you look at it and you're like, why is there an Egyptian boat of the dead in the air? And there's like adventurers with a rope, like what is happening?
I'll go ahead and read it. So, bronze double doors open the center of the south wall of a 30-foot square room. 4 pillars rise up to the ceiling. On the west side of the room, running the full length of the wall, is a reed boat. Its mast lasts to the bottom of the boat. There are several jars inside the boat. There is a post in the boat's bow with what appears to be an empty setting for a huge gem on it. On the east wall, there is a large painting of the same boat that is on the west side of the room, as though it were sailing high above the clouds, carrying a large and beautiful gemstone in its bow. In the center of the room is a stand with a plaque on it that reads plainly, "Let him who knows our God speak his name." There is another set of bronze double doors in the center of the north wall.
All right. So the puzzle here is that if you go to touch the painting or do anything with the painting, you will move through it because it's not really a painting. It's like it teleports you to 10,000 feet in the air above the pyramid where this boat actually is. So there's an exact copy of the reed boat anchored to the cloud. And one of the differences, though, is that the star of Mo Polar is the bow of the ship, which is one of the two treasures you're looking for.
Yeah.
So it also says anyone who jumps through the magical window will fall 10,000 feet onto the pyramid, doing 20d6 points of damage.
Probably you're going to have a really bad day.
It's like surviving 20d6 is possible. That seems like falling. I don't know. I feel like you should just die. But so basically the characters have to find a way to get to the floating boat from the painting / portal and get the gem. Now you're level 5. You have like access to spells and stuff, so you should be able to like fly or teleport or something at this point.
Yeah. So what you could do, you could teleport, you could fly. In the great thing is in the picture that they have, and they have them like tying some ropes to someone's waist, and then they basically ran and then jumped and tried to grab the boat, but the reeds, like it's a reed boat, so then they're like falling with this rope on them, but they have a rope and they're probably going to fall. It's a pretty great illustration.
Yeah, that's a really cool picture. I didn't notice the falling through the reeds part of it. That's really cool.
Yeah, so they grabbed the reeds and they didn't get it and they're falling now. But it's pretty fun. So
also one thing that it does say is like so earlier in the dungeon it says like teleporting doesn't work. You can't teleport in or out of the dungeon. And this does clarify that you could teleport through the window to the boat. So because you're technically outside of the dungeon. So if you're speed running this dungeon, Kyle, you know what you should do? You should get to the pyramid, cast fly on yourself, fly 10,000 feet in the air, and then enter this room through the painting.
Yeah, or you grab the star on the boat and then enter the room through the painting.
Yeah, the star technically isn't in the pyramid, which is kind of funny now that I think about it. Does that count as looting the pyramid if the star's not in the pyramid to begin with? That's weird now that I think about it.
It is, yeah. Try not to. Yeah, it's part. Yeah.
Maybe the Pharaoh staff is the thing that actually matters.
Yeah, maybe that's the one. I mean, it's really the combination of the two. So, and definitely, the next room actually has the staff with a mummy.
Yes. So, the next room is the actual tomb of Amun-Re. So, when you open the sarcophagus, you will be attacked by a mummy. Now, if you don't know this about D&D mummies, they suck. They're horrible. AD&D mummies give you mummy rot, and it sucks.
So go look that up in the monster manual, and it does a lot of terrible things. And, you're at the end of the module, so who knows how much you've rested or whatever. So, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, it also says lying across the sarcophagus is the Pharaoh staff of ruling. So I don't think you need to open the sarcophagus. So I guess that's just a little surprise for people looking for more treasure.
Yeah, so if you actually do, and there's no treasure in this, it's the real thing is right there on top of the sarcophagus. So, and
then the Pharaoh staff of ruling. So to find out what the Pharaoh staff of ruling does, you have to go to page 32. So it's worth 5,000 gold in the hands of someone who knows how to use it. There's 3 types of magical acts that it can do. Striking the tip of the ground 3 times will cause the staff to polymorph into a large venomous snake. It will not attack the wielder of the staff, and grasping the snake by the tail firmly at -2 to hit polymorphs it back. So you have to attack your staff to make it from a snake into a staff again, which is a little weird. Striking the ground, it specifically tells you how to do this too, which I think is funny. Striking the ground twice and then spinning the tip in the air will create a globular ball of lightning, which for every round it is spun before released at its target will develop 1d6 points of damage potential. So you can Dragon Ball Z charge your attack and then throw it.
Yes.
It sounds like. But if you must concentrate, and if you are disturbed during the spinning, then the ball detonates on the spot. So it blows up in your face if you get too greedy with it, I guess. And then striking the ground once and then pointing it skyward will produce a clap of thunder, such volume that all exposed creatures within 1,000 feet must save petrification or be struck with fear for 1d10 rounds.
It's all creatures too, plus your party members as well.
And yourself, presumably, which is weird.
Yeah.
And then the Star of Mo Polar, it It's a relic that could be used as a gem of true seeing. It is one of the set of 3 that has a foretold destiny in the desert. That story is told in Oasis of the White Palm and Lost Tomb of Martek in the next 2 dungeons. So there's a little through line there. There's there's another statue which we've already associated with being secret doors. And if you hold the Star of Mopolar in your right hand and the staff in the left, as the same way that the statue has it holding it, you will be able to teleport to the area in room K4 in the temple. So that's like right back to the beginning. So you don't have to like find a way. You don't have to fight your way back out. You can just teleport back. Which I call this a Skyrim door, because every dungeon in Skyrim always has, at the very end, has a door that goes out. So it's like it's a Skyrim door. So on page 32, there's an optional ending. So at the end of the module play, it says you might want to provide an ending to your players for the stuff to wrap up, which is as follows. Stretching under the sun to the sharp and distant horizon, a silence hangs heavy in the still, dry air. Time itself seems to be stopped in its flight, holding all the world in the balance. You see a lone figure, unmoving in the distance. As you ponder those pitiful robes, a change begins to take place. The roll of distant thunder comes gently across the far-flung sands. The horizon blurs in the distance and shifts to the left at all the compass points and starts to spin around the massive pyramid. As it tightens its circle, the wind comes closer, blocking your sight of everything beyond it. That endless track and the lone figure have vanished. The tightening whirlwind rises to a jarring crescendo as the sand and wind crash in upon the temple and tomb. Whirling winds and sand sing past you, a chorus of 1,000 voices, the hopes and cries of a land long dead, and the name of a hapless pharaoh, Amun-Re. Only the awesome pyramid itself can be seen. Its forbidding form stands in dark majesty through the winds. The sandstorm turns to a spiral above the tomb, rising in its rage to glorious heights, bends westward and takes flight. And all is still once more. The sand in the air drifts slowly to the earth, below in silence, and all is as it was. Yet not quite, for the silence is not complete. Down below, as yet unseen through the settling dust, lifts the cool sound of running water. The clearing air soon reveals a cracked pool, now overflowing with spring-clear water, and a long-dead channel taking, at each step, its own parched drink before passing the flowing river on. It will take time to heal this land, but there will be blossoms in this spring, for Athis has returned from her exile, and with her comes life. All right, Kyle, so thus concludes Pharaoh. What did you think about Pharaoh?
Out of all the ones we've read so far, this is probably my favorite. It probably has the most dialogue and the most, the most story, cohesive story. I think the very first one was pretty good too. Lost City was really good. But yeah, I think this one is just as good as that one, if not better. I would enjoy running this. I would enjoy playing in this. I think it would have been really good. I think there's a lot of, there's definitely some still the old problematic, culturally appropriations of some things on there, but it is a fantasy realm, so you can't get too carried away with it. But there's some definite tropes that, aren't something that we would use in the modern day. But for the most part, yeah, I think this is it's great. It's really good. What do you think of the ending, Kyle? What do you think of Pharaoh?
Yeah, this was also one of my favorite ones that we have done thus far. I really appreciated the extra plot and motivations that were put into the characters. I like that there's a reason for you to go on this adventure that isn't just like, hey, go get some treasure. Like, you're an adventurer. That's what you do, right? Go do it. And I feel like of all the adventures I've read, this is the most, like, the one that has the most things that stuck around to modern dungeon design.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
All right, and join us next session as we go over the Desert of Desolation Module 2, the Oasis of the White Palm. Thanks for listening. Make sure to follow us on your podcast app of choice and follow us on Blue Sky at adventuresgonemad.bsky.social. Are you enjoying Adventures Gone Mad? If so, please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. Did you play Pharaoh? We want to hear about it. Contact us at adventuresgonemad@gmail.com and join us next time for the Oasis of the White Palm. So yeah, we're reading, I already said that.
And so I had it sitting in my shelves. I've not thrown away any of my D&D stuff, or maybe I have, but it's been very little, not very much of it. God damn it.
Oh my god, silence your phone, you
God
monster.
damn it.
How dare you? Your flow is gone, you have to start over.
I will start again. So...
binding them together and copying them at the local local coffee shop. They copied them at the coffee shop, Kyle. Random tangent. Can I tell you that my family uses the word evening as an alternate to afternoon.
Really?
And I was an adult when I found out that people mean like evening when they mean evening. So I would be like, sometimes at work, I'd be like, oh yeah, I'm going to do it this evening. And they'd be like, what? And I'm like, yeah, I'm going to do it like after lunch, like at 1. And they'd be
That's afternoon.
And then like people would be weird about it. And I was like, I didn't realize it. And then, until I was an adult, I didn't realize evening meant like late. I don't know.
Later than 5. Yeah, that's usually when I think of evening, is later than 5 or 6.
Yeah, I just thought evening for most of my adult life meant anytime afternoon. Anyways, thought that was made me think of that. Is a yellow translucent. I'm not gonna read the whole thing, but the too long didn't read is that I'm gonna sneeze. God damn it. Fuck, I can sense it coming. 1 second. The tomb, the part of the tomb that... There's a post...
Do you want me to read this?
Yeah, go ahead. My brain's scattered.
For some reason, you're dying on this one.
Join us next week when we go over the Desert of Desolation Module 2, the Oasis of the White Palm.
You said next week, by the way.
God damn it. I keep doing that. All right.